Together, we will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, my friends, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us. Very excited about today's show. Not so much because we're learning anything new, but because it feels like a certain kind of vindication. They told us the election of 2020 was the safest, most secure election in history. We knew that was bullshit. We said it then. We've said it since. Some of us lost our channels. Some of us lost our accounts. We were denied the right to even speak about it, because to do so was tantamount to heresy. Oh, you were speaking out against the official religion of election security. Garbage. Nothing safe and secure about elections in America, which is what makes them fake and gay, which is why they have to be fixed. This is why we have stayed committed. There is no such thing as a free and fair election in a system that only allows you to vote in one that isn't real. Do me a favor. If you haven't yet, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button. Help us out. Share the show. All right. Sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. We're going to be right back after this. Recently, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. This isn't just government spending, it's a declaration of intent because America needs uranium, domestic uranium, and it needs it now. So here's the reality. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium every single year, but we produce less than 1 million pounds domestically. Obviously, that leaves America 98% dependent on foreign suppliers for our supply. It's a critical vulnerability for national security, power generation, and advanced weapons systems. With Russia controlling much of the global enrichment capacity and escalating tensions in Iran threatening nuclear supply, the stakes could not be higher, which is why the White House has made it crystal clear. America must develop its own supply chain. And this is where Kirkstone Metals comes in. They trade under KSM in Canada and KSMCF in the US. They've got decades of uranium and junior mining expertise, and Kirkstone's leadership team knows how to turn exploration projects into real value. But the question is, can they do it again? Kirkstone controls two 100% owned uranium projects strategically located in the Athabasca Basin. This is the richest uranium district on the planet. Same area, same world-class neighborhood, and at their flagship Key Lake project, drilling has already hit high-grade uranium right near the surface, but the team truly believes the real prize lies deep underground. So using a playbook based on the decade's biggest discoveries, they're hunting the massive source below. So let's talk about the Athabasca Basin. It's home to multi-billion-dollar names like NextGen Energy and Denison Mines, but the real upside, it's often the junior explorers that are operating right next door. The Athabasca Basin has delivered over 20% of the world's uranium discoveries, with an estimated $200 to $300 billion worth of uranium identified in the ground, and yet Kirkstone is still sitting at a market cap below $12 million. That's an enormous disconnect between what's found in this district and how some companies are valued today. On January 14th, the U.S. administration reinforced their commitment to domestic energy security. invoking Section 232 via an executive order. It's a formal declaration of resource independence, and it goes beyond support. It's a mandate. Energy security is now national security, and the U.S. government is deploying its full fiscal and regulatory tools to secure the nuclear fuel cycle in North America. Kirkstone Metals, trading as KSMCF in the U.S. and KSM in Canada, is strategically positioned to capitalize on this shift. Now, uranium prices have surged, and some analysts project prices could exceed $100 per pound by 2026 as demand outpaces supply. Federal momentum has already begun to translate into dollars on the ground, including billions in planned funding for domestic uranium enrichment capacity. The sector is entering one of its most active drilling seasons in years, and with its flagship drill program approved, Kirkstone has exploration underway, and they're advancing with a focus on execution. Some companies operating in the district are valued at over $10 billion, and with the U.S. pushing for domestic uranium, Kirkstone could potentially become a leading beneficiary of the reshoring mandate. So if you want to learn more about this critical mineral story and about a team that has delivered big results in the past, check out the link in the description. And a very special thanks to Kirkstone Metals for making today's video possible. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to give a big shout out to a couple of Patriots who have just supported the show. I really do appreciate both of you. Eleanor 2000 says, always look forward to your positive take on Clown World, Zach. Even my hubby is now enjoying listening to you. Thank you very much, Mr. Eleanor 2000, for also tuning in. Also, thank you to Mimi2Boys X2, who echoes the sentiment by saying, I agree. Sweet Miss Eleanor 2000, Zach is the one who helps keep me sane. Thank you very much. You know, and I've said it before, you guys also help keep me sane because we are all in this together. We're all fighting for the same thing, and we are all hoping at the end of the day that we fix America for good. It's a tall order. We are actively working against decades, generations of institutional rot, but I think we're actually doing it. Now, yesterday at the tail end of the show, someone in the chat had left a donation letting us know that someone in their family had recently passed away. And so I wanted to make sure that I took some time to actually look into the story before I brought it to you guys. And I did, and it is as tragic as it can possibly get. So on Saturday, April 4th at 9 p.m., my niece, Jordan Dableston, this is the voice of the person writing the GoFundMe, was stopped at a stoplight in Lubbock, Texas. A 3/4-ton truck plowed into the back of her vehicle. Jordan's back was broken in 3 places, and her spinal cord was severed. We've spent the last few days holding her hand, praying for a miracle. This morning, the neurologist confirmed that there is no brain activity, and we have to let our sweet girl go. Jordan was a 22-year-old junior at Texas Tech. She was studying to be a registered nurse. Jordan was the sweetest, kindest girl who loved nothing more than her family and her animals. My sister Melody, her husband Carl, Buddy, Jordan's siblings Cheyenne, Cody, and Cassidy are experiencing the worst thing that any family can imagine or should have to. We're asking for anyone who has a little to spare to donate towards Jordan's funeral costs. We've gotten very little information from the police. There's no media coverage. We also need your help in putting this out there to pressure the police to tell us more and get justice for Jordan. Now, I do have one story from the local media, and we're going to look at that. But this isn't much that they're asking for. They're merely trying to cover the cost of their daughter's funeral, and so I felt that there was nothing wrong with sharing the GoFundMe here with you in the audience. If this is something that you guys can help with, then please feel free. Otherwise, I want you to send your prayers to the family because this is just obviously a very, very tragic situation. You know, initially, the fact that they are not releasing much information leads me to believe that maybe this is another situation where an illegal alien has killed an American citizen. Let's go ahead and look at the local coverage of Jordan and the crash. Oh, and I need to turn the volume up. 1 second.
Jordan, we had to let her go yesterday, and we're burying her.
Hold on. I just realized that the image on screen is not the image that I meant to show. I need to fix that. Okay, so
We don't know who did this, and they won't tell.
First of all, this is Jordan. This is Jordan right here so that everybody can see her. The family has raised just about $13,000 out of the $16,000 required to bury Jordan. And let me see if they're, oh gosh, and here she is in the hospital. Really sad. Vibrant young woman, clearly taken before she had a chance to really leave a mark on the world. Really, really sad situation. Okay, and here is the local coverage.
Jordan, we had to let her go yesterday, and we're burying her, and we don't know who did this, and they won't tell us.
Family of a 22-year-old Jordan Dabelstein is searching for answers tonight after she died in a horrific car crash on campus Saturday night. Hi there, I'm Lauren Motter.
I'm Brian Mudd. Jordan was a student at Texas Tech studying to be a nurse. Jordan's family telling us they've not yet received a police report about what happened. An off-duty Lubbock police officer who was at the scene did reach out to them today, telling them they happened to be stopped at a traffic light next to Jordan when a truck plowed right into the back of her car.
Someone in the chat just said aliens can't be illegal. I don't know if you're being cute, but illegal alien is a legal term. It is specifically a foreigner who has entered or resides in a country unlawfully or without the authorization of the country. So an alien being illegal, alien is somebody who is not of this land here illegally. They are an illegal alien. So I'm not sure if you were trying to be cute or something, but
No screeching, no brakes. They just plowed into her.
why is it not finishing?
Measures, he didn't think that she would make it, but he hadn't been able to follow up anywhere on the news. He hadn't seen any information anywhere. He's with the Lubbock Police Department, and the Texas Tech Police Department is the one who have been investigating.
Texas Tech Police telling us today only that they are still actively investigating what happened. Texas Tech releasing a statement reading in part, the university extends its deepest condolences to her family and friends, and they're offering support to those affected. We've got a link to a GoFundMe to help.
So the fact that it's a university police department makes it even more likely to me that it might be an illegal alien. They're not saying, who was in the truck. They're not saying if that person has, if they're okay, if they were injured as well. This is obviously a story that I'm going to continue to follow up on. But I would also suggest that anybody who lives in the area, if you hear anything about this, if the family wants to continue to send me information. Okay, wait. Report update from 6 days ago states driver of pickup was 81-year-old Jimmy Boyette. Okay, let me pull that up. Thank you for that. Okay, here we go. 6 days ago, Texas Tech Police provide new details. Texas Tech Police have released new details on what led to the crash that killed Texas Tech student near campus earlier this month, just after 9 p.m. Police were called to a two-vehicle crash. 22-year-old Jordan Dabelstein was stopped at a red light when she was struck behind by a Ford F-150 traveling at a high rate of speed. The impact caused her car to be pushed through the intersection. The driver of the Ford pickup, 81-year-old Jimmy Boyette, and an 81-year-old female passenger were both taken to UMC with minor injuries, so they are fine. Well, let's see what we can find out about 81-year-old Jimmy Boyette. I wonder if alcohol was a factor in the crash. Well, there is his personal information available online. I'm not going to pull that up. That's a different Jimmy Boyette. Well, it doesn't look like there's any other news about Jimmy, and these are the only two places where his name is released. 5 days ago. I'm not going to subscribe. Jimmy Boyette and his 81-year-old companion, minor injuries. Initial investigation indicates Dabelstein was stopped at a traffic signal facing northbound when she was rear-ended by an F-150 traveling at a high rate of speed. The impact pushed the Rio through the intersection. According to crash report, Boyette's passenger reportedly told officers that he might have blacked out, and he was unable to lift his foot off the accelerator as they approached the intersection. No arrests have been made. Okay, so the fact that he might have blacked out, that only happens, when your alcohol is involved. Really, really sad story. All right. Thank you so much to G Quick for now also joining as a monthly supporter over on Rumble. Now, this is a story I didn't get a chance to get to yesterday. BDR1776 says, let's all give Zach $5 if you can for the most honest news out there. Thank you for all you do. Thank you very much for the support, my friends. All right. Now, this picture started making the rounds over the weekend, and it features an IDF soldier using what appears to be a sledgehammer to destroy a statue of Jesus, which was previously on the cross. And a lot of people were very offended. I know that I'm very offended by this. However, other people were saying that this picture was fake, that it was produced with artificial intelligence, that there's no way IDF, the Israelis, they're our #1 allies. And of course, our combined Judeo-Christian values would never allow them to do something like this. But unfortunately, the IDF have confirmed that the footage of this soldier smashing a statue of Jesus during ground operations in Lebanon is actually 100% authentic. And they actually made a post on X saying that they were investigating the incident and that they would take appropriate measures. Following the completion of an initial investigation regarding a photograph published earlier today of an IDF soldier harming a Christian symbol, it was determined that the photograph depicts an IDF soldier operating in southern Lebanon. The IDF views the incident with great severity and emphasizes the soldier's conduct is wholly inconsistent with the values expected of its troops. That, my friends, is a lie, and I'm going to show you quite a few instances of similar things happening. In fact, Christians in southern Lebanon have actually been under assault by the Israelis and the IDF as they move in for the entire time they've been there. The incident is being investigated by the Northern Command and is currently being addressed through the chain of command. Appropriate measures will be taken against those involved, according to the findings. Furthermore, the IDF is working to assist the community in restoring the statue to its place. It's not the first time that a Christian relic or a Christian holy site has been desecrated in the Holy Land. In fact, it's happened on quite a few occasions. So I don't really know why they're acting like this is unusual. But certainly, I don't think the IDF wants the entire Western world and all of Christendom coming and no longer supporting them. Although, a lot of people are not supporting what they're doing in Lebanon and in other places. Now, you might remember that during Easter weekend, there was a dispute between Catholic officials in Jerusalem after police prevented entry into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre over fears of Iranian attacks. However, the incident was addressed after meetings between officials from Christian denominations in Jerusalem, law enforcement, and political leaders. And they were eventually let in so that they could perform the ceremonies over the holiday weekend. But you know what Israel never shuts down is Pride Fests, because they are actually the largest hoster of Pride events in the entire world. They never seem to shut them down. I would like to play for you a clip from a Jewish rabbi, and he's also, I believe, a member of the Knesset. And he kind of gives the, I guess, his thoughts on what it means when the IDF enters a foreign land and how he would expect them to behave around symbols of religions of other people.
All place in the world that we will occupy in a war, milchemet mitzvah. We go to a war, we occupy. Let's say we occupy Lebanon. And over there, there's idol worshipping places. We have the same obligation to destroy it. Why?
And when he says idol worshiping, he is, specifically talking about signs of Christianity, which would be a crucifix or a representation of Christ.
Because now we live there. We occupy the place. We occupy the place. The Torah say, "Uvi'ar ta'ara mikirbecha." Don't leave anything, any idols among you. So every place that you live in, and now you the original owner of the place now, you the new owner, I should say, From now on, you have the same obligation to purify the place from all the idols. Well, we're here now, right now, to learn what the law is. Even if the United States government would say, okay, hey, you're becoming too fanatic, the government, too religious. We'll give you $1 billion extra every year to the aid. Don't touch the churches. We're not allowed to listen to them. God comes before Obama and his friends.
Don't touch the churches. He says, no, it doesn't matter. We would go ahead and destroy them anyways. And destroy them, they have. There have been quite a few holy sites that have been destroyed over the course of the last several years. So here is a supercut, if you will, of common events like this taking place.
Whoa, whoa.
But it's really big and it's inappropriate for this place, okay? That's a Jewish place, you need to respect the place. Can you please put it inside?
Okay, this is
I'm
very harsh.
respecting
It's
your
very
religion.
That's a Christian grave.
They've picked up chunks and are smashing the cross.
You ask me, you and you fucking Jesus could kiss my ass, okay? Go away. Camera, no camera. I break your camera. Don't take picture, okay?
This happened very recently, just prior to the destruction of that crucifix.
Border village of Sarada, and I want to show you how badly this church has been absolutely desecrated by the Israeli forces. You can see here that there's a bunch of graffiti on the wall, but I think actually that's probably the least offensive thing. But I think one of the most offensive things that we have found in this church is the desecration of religious figurines. So this would have been Jesus.
So in no way do I mean to insinuate that like all Jewish people are going to do something like this. That's definitely not what I'm saying. However, the IDF are trained to go in and to destroy whatever is in front of them. And it doesn't matter if it's a symbol of Islam or if it's a symbol of Christianity. It may not be that way amongst all soldiers of the IDF, but the truth of the matter is this happens a lot. And the fact that people don't know about it kind of shocks me. So I think it's important just to like talk about it a little bit so that people can understand that this is really the way that it is in the Middle East. And when you've got peoples that hate each other to such a degree, I hope that it would give people a greater understanding of why it is that President Trump is trying to bring some sort of normalized a conversation back into the Middle East, even if that means stepping in and being the bigger person, being the more mature person in the region, because left to their own devices, many of these people would simply continue destroying each other until nothing was left. That's not a tenable way to move forward. There are fanatics among all religions, all right? But certainly, you and I, my friends, we are not among them, all right? I am personally, as an American, upholding the rights that we maintain here in this country, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. It is not my business to tell anybody what to do or how to act, but I am going to call out some bullshit like destroying relics of my religion. And it doesn't matter who you fight for, doesn't matter who you worship. If you are engaging in that behavior, you need to be called out, and it needs to be put on blast. Real News had said this cross was unearthed near my house yesterday. Ironic. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Wow, mysterious cross-shaped stone unearthed near Watertown Airport. That is pretty cool. Watertown. Where is Watertown at? In New York. Okay. Emerald Dragon says, I'm matching the $5 challenge. I could care less about any religion but that guy. He can go fuck himself with a 5-foot tentacle dildo as long as he doesn't enjoy it. Oh my God. That is quite the visual, Emerald Dragon. All right, let's check out this ancient cross that was just unearthed. This has clearly been worked by human hands. It looks ancient. So this is in
Looking
New York.
to grow your channel? Stream on Rumble Studio. Then clip your live stream instantly.
A massive stone shaped like a cross unearthed during the construction of a new industrial park near the Watertown airport. It has the Jefferson County Industrial Development Group a little confused and feeling blessed. This is it here. It's a 12 feet tall, visible from State Route 12F.
Wow.
Where it came from, how it was made, and why it's here. All questions Marshall Weir, CEO of the Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency, is asking. Weir says it looks like it's made of cement, indicating that it would be man-made. There also appears to be a large metal pipe near the center of it and several pieces of rebar and tar sticking out of the back. Weir not sure what they'll be doing next with the cross-shaped stone.
I would say we're kind of excited about it, blessing infrastructure projects in Jefferson County. I think at some point it will be moved, depending on the build out of this park. But I have no idea what the plans are long term for this historical biblical artifact.
It is getting a lot of attention as people drive by. For right now, it will stay there until they can decide on where to put it and, of course, learn more about what it is.
That is wild. How cool is
Ready
that?
to upgrade your driveway or park.
Well, keep me informed, Real News Head. I'm interested to see exactly where that came from. All right, now, this is another story I meant to talk about yesterday. Dr. Oz had some interesting news about the 450 to 500 hospices in California that they recently shut down. Now, of course, because of the fact that leaders in California seem to be, really not too focused on exposing fraud, you would think that maybe they would want to support local businesses. They would be going and asking the federal government to begin funding these businesses again, or that any of these businesses that were legitimate, they themselves might reach out and say, my goodness, we have all of these patients and they're no longer going to be able to receive care from us. If you'll remember, back in March, Nick Shirley, after his bombshell report from Minnesota, he went to California and discovered at least $170 million just in a single day walking around a single strip mall office park. He said, we uncovered over $170 million as in fraud as these fraudsters live in luxury with no consequences. There was obviously a lot of money that was coming out of this little mini trash office park because every single car in the parking lot was a beautiful, beautiful luxury car. California's version of Medicaid is called Medi-Cal, and it's more than doubled since 2022. It went from $108 billion in 2022 to now $222 billion in 2026. You might think that, hey, maybe the population's growing. Maybe the number of sick people in California has growing. But here's the thing. Their population has not grown exponentially. It certainly hasn't doubled. They don't have twice as many sick people. And oftentimes they have people who are on hospice, which is an end-of-life service. My dad, when he was dying of cancer, he went on hospice and he was gone within 48 hours, I think. I mean, he didn't last very long on hospice, but for some reason, the people in California, they take a really long time to die. But the one thing I can tell you is, obviously, those people aren't real. And the money, however, is very real. There's been over a 1,000% increase in hospice care in Los Angeles County alone. And Nick visited all of these hospice centers and also several daycares in San Diego. In early April, as a result of Nick Shirley's reporting, California's Attorney General Rob Bonta, Democrat also running for governor, not going to win, announced that his office had actually charged 21 suspects
suspects. They were able to identify $267 million in hospice fraud out of a specific ring, one ring in Southern California. We also had that raid from the brand new administration's fraud task force that raided multiple hospice fraudster healthcare centers across the southern part of California. 8 people were arrested. They were charged. That was over $50 million in fraud in that instance. Of course, all of this is separate from the healthcare centers that were shut down by Dr. Oz and CMS. Now, signaling just how staggering the level of fraud is in a Democrat-run state like California. Dr. Oz, who is the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Service, he was speaking with Katie Pavlich, and he made this shocking admission. Out of those 500 or so healthcare centers that they shut down, you would think that maybe 1 or 2 of them, if not half of them, might be legitimate healthcare centers, but it turns out that all of them were fake because not a single one had requested to have their money turned back on. Every single one of them, as soon as the money stopped flowing, they all stopped talking. They all probably fled the country because they realize that the fraud has been exposed. There is no more free money, and therefore there's no reason to stick around and pretend like they're actually taking care of anybody.
What is the response to Democrats arguing that this rooting out of fraud, that it's cutting Medicaid services? What is your response to that?
None at all. They know it's manufactured. That's why when they say this sort of, like sheepishly mention the possibility that you might once in a while hurt someone that's innocent. I argue that if you take a child with autism and you give them the services they need, you're doing a great service. It's the right thing to do.
I just want to make sure everybody is aware. I am not zooming in on Dr. Oz's face like this. This is how the video is coming up. I don't quite understand why it's zoomed in so far.
We're great people. We'll always help folks in need. But if every mother is pretending because they're getting paid that the children in the neighborhood have autism, which is bad for those kids, by the way.
And you're seeing that.
And we're seeing that in Minnesota. You take a budget from $3 million to $400 million. You do that by creating programs and manufacturing services that aren't supposed to be used. But what you're doing is you're hurting the child who really has autism. Because
Bareen Jane says, my sister had 6 months to live. I took care of her and she lived 18 months. It's just a guess. Absolutely just a guess. My point when talking about all of these people who don't seem to die in California is that none of them actually exist. What happens is, and we've talked about this scam before, what these Medicare or hospice centers do is they pay for lists of elderly people with Medicaid numbers, and then they just start billing for services. So in probably 9 times, or in California, 10 times out of 10, they've never actually met these people. And the elderly don't even know that their number has been used for these sorts of things until something tragic happens, and then then they actually need hospice care, and they say, well, you've been receiving hospice care for the last 10 years.
they can't get access to services, and you're corrupting the entire system. We're seeing the same thing in California with hospice, where you have 1/3 of all the hospices, Katie, in the entire country are in Los Angeles, not California, just LA. I mean, how many people are dying there?
Yeah.
Right, so you obviously have allowed
a little bit of a red flag.
And I'll make this announcement on your show, we have stopped payments to 450 hospices in California. Guess what? Not one has called us asking to reinstitute them.
Wow.
Now, they may change their minds over time, but in 10 weeks, we've shut down 450 payment systems to these guys. That's representing at least $600, $700 million just this year, and no one's complaining.
Wow. Well, obviously, they're all a bunch of crooks. Gateway Maga 5 says, $5 challenge accepted. RPN and Zak Paine are the best. My friend, thank you very much. Also, Moon Baby says, here's a late fee. Hey there, family. I'm good to see you. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cans as well. Appreciate you, buddy. All right. So, good news. Fraud getting shut down. Let's continue going, guys. Hazel Kitty says, any of this money finding its way into Newsom, Bass, etc. pockets? I would say it's probably unlikely that it isn't, but there's no way to determine that, because once the money goes into an account and then it gets donated into somebody's campaign fund, the only way to track that is if you have the name of the person who donated the money. Now, what we would want to do is at the end of the year, after we can see all of these filings, once they actually name people who are responsible for these frauds, we would take a look at their names and the publicly available lists of donors, and then we could match them up, and then we could say, you know, okay, so this person definitely was donating to this person. But I would suggest there is definitely some. Probably there's so much to go around. A lot of it's also just going out of the country. My Undivided Life says challenge met and Zak greatness accepted. Thank you so much. All right, another story I didn't get a chance to talk about yesterday. A couple of Georgia election workers have just been charged in, you'll never guess it, not an election fraud scheme, but a healthcare fraud scheme. These are two Georgia election workers and several other Middle Georgia women who have been charged for their role in a healthcare fraud scheme, very similar to what we were just talking about in California. We've got Tarshia Fudge Riley. That name slays me. She's the election supervisor for Macon County, Georgia, and LaMonica Lakes. She's an election clerk and deputy election registrar. Both allegedly participated in a years-long scheme to commit healthcare fraud. Now, these women submitted fraudulent insurance claims for mental health therapy sessions that I guess never happened. So federal prosecutors believed that Miss Fudge Riley, who is the chief Macon County Board of Elections supervisor, and Miss Lakes, an elections clerk at the Macon County Board of Elections, as well as a Miss Childs, were paid by a man by the name of James Ellis. James Ellis paid them to knowingly create fake therapy session notes. Those fake therapy session notes would then be submitted to healthcare insurance providers for prepayment review. Now, Fudge Riley and Lakes both reportedly are still working in the elections office. These are not the people that we want around our elections. I personally believe that anyone who works in a position of public trust, if they commit an act of fraud, I don't care if it's related to elections or it's related to something else, they should immediately be required to surrender their resignation, or they should be shoved out the door. Yes, Miss Fudge. If you are a fraudster, then I'm sorry, but I don't trust you to do anything else that people need to have some level of faith in your ability for. But these women received millions of dollars as a result of submitting these fraudulent claims. Undoubtedly, they lined their pockets for as long as they possibly could. Here are the alleged guilty parties: Tarshia Fudge Riley, probably those braces are paid for by her fraudulent efforts, and then also, of course, LaMonica Lakes right there. All right, so let's take a look at the local reporting for WGXA. A Montezuma therapist, that would be Mr. Ellis, and then two Macon County Board of Elections officials, and then two other Middle Georgia women are facing federal charges for their connection in a years-long mental health care fraud scheme. According to that indictment filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Georgia, Don James Ellis, 54, Tarshia Fudge Riley, 53, and LaMonica Lakes, 47, all hailing from Montezuma, as well as 54-year-old Angela Childs of Vienna and 43-year-old Adrian Harris of Warner Robins, have been charged with one count of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud on March 10th, 2026. Now, of course, one count of healthcare fraud may seem as if it's not enough, but there's always superseding indictments. Oftentimes, there is an initial indictment, and then more charges can come a little bit later. But it was a grand jury indictment that alleges that on January 19th, up until December of 2022, James Ellis, the licensed therapist operating her practice, Dawn James Ellis. I thought James was the first name. James is the hyphenated name. Why does everybody have hyphenated names nowadays? Who is the licensed therapist? It's called Therapy on the Go in Montezuma. Submitted several fraudulent insurance claims for mental health therapy sessions she knew never occurred to receive these millions of dollars in payments from a variety of insurance companies. Federal prosecutors believe Miss Fudge Riley, who is the chief Macon County Board of Elections supervisor, and Lakes, the elections clerk, as well as Childs, were paid by James Ellis to knowingly create fake therapy sessions and then would submit them. Our health insurance programs, particularly those that provide benefits to our military service members and their dependents, are vital to those who need assistance to medical treatment. That is U.S. Attorney Margaret Heap. With our law enforcement partners, we will aggressively pursue those who fraudulently access these funds for their own personal gain. The reach of this investigation extends beyond healthcare and into the deliberate manipulation of federal programs designed to support honest small businesses. That is Special Agent in Charge Jason J. Sargensky. He is the Defense Criminal Investigative Specialist from the Southeast Field Office. By allegedly utilizing wire fraud to siphon resources from the Small Business Administration while simultaneously defrauding TRICARE, the defendant demonstrated a pattern of deceit that harms both taxpayer and the integrity of our nation's essential support systems. We remain dedicated to following the trail of fraud wherever it leads to ensure those who prioritize personal greed over public service are fully held accountable. So that means the investigation is not over. Hopefully, if anybody else was involved in this long-running fraud scheme, they too will be charged. And I hope that each and every one of these people ends up in prison for many, many years. Let me say thank you so much to Salt Muncher ODA, who says, I'm in. Zach is awesome. Excited Pepe. Thank you for that, Salt Muncher. Penn W says, challenge accepted. I appreciate both you and Lisa. God bless you. Thank you, Penn. And then also Dr. Pepper 23. Been watching you from the very beginning. Thank you for all you do. Dr. Pepper, I appreciate you, my friend. Mokron says, imagine if someone knew the election workers were stealing. That would be some serious leverage to get a few extra ballots pushed around. That's an excellent point, and it's another perfect reason why someone in a position of this type of public trust cannot be held to some standard like that. They must be impeccable. They cannot have any skeletons in their closet, because as soon as you have a skeleton in your closet that somebody can control you with, well, then obviously the system over which you have some level of responsibility is no longer secure. JW Ricken says, no comment necessary. I love you, JW. Thank you, homie. Dr. Pepper 23 also says, you are the best. Well, Dr. Pepper, thank you for that, my friend. I appreciate you. Let me also say thank you over on Pilled for the cookie fight. Let's see. Sean Joe says, Zach Doff is indicating the DOJ is indicting the SPLC. Yes, we are actually going to be talking about the SPLC today. If you guys watch the show that I do with John on Baseless Conspiracies, then some time ago you might have seen the program that we did on the SPLC, where we talked about the crazy things they've done over the years to try to essentially implicate right-wing groups in acts of violence. And it is finally coming back to bite them in the ass. Oh my gosh, Angie K says arrests have started. Here is a tweet from the Justice Department. Oh my gosh. You guys, Cash said over the weekend, stay tuned. I've got one of those stay tuned right here, but oh my gosh. Okay, so this is, so it started right now. Let's see. What are they?
Camera with the U.S. Olympic hockey
has been charged.
Okay. So they have arrested and they've charged somebody. Let's take a listen real quick.
Good afternoon. Today, a few minutes ago, in the Middle District of Alabama, a grand jury returned an 11-count indictment charging the Southern Poverty Law Center with 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering.
Let's go! Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to push this story forward. Well, hang on just a sec. Before we watch the press conference, let me tell you what was reported earlier today. So the Southern Poverty Law Center actually came forward and said that they are facing a possible Justice Department criminal probe over their use of paid informants. Holy shit, it's happening. All right, so they admitted to the AP that they were the subject of a criminal investigation by the DOJ and that they may face several charges over their use of paid informants to infiltrate extremist groups. So they announced saying that President Trump's administration appears to be preparing legal action against some of its employees. The CEO of the SPLC, which is a terrorist organization, said, although we don't know all the details, the focus appears to be on the SPLU's prior use of paid confidential informants to gather credible intelligence on extremely violent groups. Now, of course, the DOJ did not comment. Southern Poverty Law Center previously has paid informants to infiltrate what they call extremist groups, gather information on their activities, and then they often share it with local and federal law enforcement. But of course, there is no relation now with Trump 2.0 between the SPLC and the FBI. Kash Patel cut that off rather early. So they allege that what they do is just monitor threats of violence, and that they would use this program to basically pay for their informants. What they actually would do would implant people in so-called extremist groups, usually groups associated with the right, and then they would essentially have those people drive extremism within the group. They would essentially come in and make the groups crazy, and they would have them do crazy things. It was a total shit show, and it's like as if you had placed a plant inside an organization designed to bring that organization down from the inside and make them look as radical as possible. When we began working with informants, we were living in the shadow of the height of the civil rights movement, which had seen bombings at churches, state-sponsored violence against demonstrators, and the murders of activists that went unanswered by the justice system. There is no question that what we learned from informants saved lives. And he said that the organization will vigorously defend themselves, their staff, and their work. So the SPLC is a terrorist organization. They essentially work to destroy people, and it's based on politics. It's not based on, extremism. I can't believe they've already raided them. This is so good.
According to the charges in the indictment, the SPLC is a nonprofit entity that purports to fight white supremacy and
not going to be a nonprofit much longer.
Racial hatred by reporting on extremist groups and conducting research to inform law enforcement groups with the goal of dismantling these groups. As the indictment describes, the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred. The indictment describes this conduct in detail, but one troubling example is that the SPLC was paying a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017.
Oh my God, yes, yes, yes!
That resulted in the death of one person and injured dozens more. This particular person being paid by the SPLC allegedly received approximately $270,000 over the course of 8 years. In total, according to the indictment, between 2014 and 2023, SPLC paid at least $3 million to 8 individuals at least. These individuals were affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, National Socialist Movement, Aryan Nations Affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, the Nationalist Socialist Party of America, Nazis, and the American Front. Now, as the indictment lays out, after SPLC paid members of these extremist groups, it created work product that reported on these activities that the members participated in or contributed to. And to that end, it was doing the exact opposite of what it's told its donors it was doing. Not dismantling extremism, but funding it.
Yes, they were!
To carry out this scheme, SPLC created bank accounts in the name of at least 5 completely fictitious organizations that had no bona fide employees or legitimate business purpose. The money was passed from SPLC to one sham account to a second sham account and then loaded onto prepaid cards to give to the members of the extremist groups. This was designed to shield the source of those funds, and because of this, SPLC is also charged with one count, as I said earlier, of conspiracy to commit money laundering. In conclusion, I want to thank the acting U.S. Attorney in the Middle District of Alabama, Kevin Davidson, who's in his district right now and not able to be with us. for bringing this important case, along with the FBI team in Alabama for their hard work during this investigation. This investigation is ongoing, and I'd like to ask Director Patel to say a few words as well.
Thank you, General Blanche. What we're here today is to announce what the General just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive, sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple of brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups.
Yes. Oh, my
I just
God.
want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the
I can't believe this is happening. This is so good. Wow. This is so good. This is amazing.
The General laid out include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses.
Wow.
Totaling over $3 million.
Wow.
Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud.
It's way more than a decade, but that's cool. I will give them that.
Conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate this ongoing fraud. This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred.
They would fuel it. That would, of course, make the argument for their mission. This is like the perfect example of the Hegelian dialectic in the NGO nonprofit system. I mean, like, my goodness. I can't wait to see who gets freaking arrested.
This is an important case brought by President Trump's administration. We're thankful to the president for his leadership and funding of not just the FBI and DOJ, but his commitment to go out there and wipe out fraud and conspiracy and waste and abuse wherever it occurs, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. Even though this money was made to appear to be coming from legitimate people and legitimate entities, we at the FBI, with our great partners at the Department of Justice and in the state of Alabama, were able to comb through a decade worth of material, a scheme that took a decade to build, so that we were able to follow the money, because money never lies, and they got caught. As the Attorney General said, these charges are varying, they are widespread and wide-ranging, and this investigation is very much ongoing. Today we're here to announce the charges of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and this investigation and the individuals who are responsible will be brought to justice. Thank you, General.
Thank you, Director Patel. Any questions?
Oh, my God.
I'd like to know.
Oh, my God. Oh, I cannot wait. Let's see what the press thinks about this. All right, just so you guys know, the SPLC was founded in 1971 to ensure the promise of the civil rights movement became a reality for all. By the late 1960s, the civil rights movement had ushered in the promise of racial equality as new federal laws and decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court ended Jim Crow segregation. But resistance was strong, and these laws had not yet brought the fundamental changes we needed in the South. So anyways, started by a guy by the name of Morris Dees.
and Morris Dees and another guy by Joseph Levin Jr. They're from Montgomery, Alabama. This is truly historic, y'all.
Know why individual people are not mentioned in this indictment? Is that something that's going to come down the pike?
Let's talk.
Is this just an indictment of the entity? Can you kind of explain, could people face charges here, or is this the indictment and you're done?
So, yes, I mean, as we said, this investigation is very much ongoing, and today the grand jury returned an indictment against only one entity, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and we'll go from there. But as you'll see from the indictment itself, it should be obvious from the indictment that the investigation is ongoing.
I want to make sure I understand. You're alleging that the Southern Poverty Law Center was paying the leaders of KKK and other groups to continue their operations? Is that?
Look at that
I'm
bitch.
not alleging it. The grand jury returned an indictment that says that. And so what the investigation found, according to the indictment that was returned today, is that they were paying. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is raising money, asking folks to give them money to dismantle racism, and over a very long period of time, they were using some of the money they raised from donors to pay to, they called them field, basically to informants, for information, for access, to just pay them for certain, to do certain things. And so, yes, that's exactly what the indictment charges.
I was wondering if this is going to expand perhaps to more groups. Perhaps there's been a lot of accusations about particular groups like the Patriot Front that get a lot of traction. And more so, is the government, or is this indictment, I should say, making the case that some of these matters where they've tried at great lengths to sort of make connections to people on the right per percent? I mean, Charlottesville was very much associated by the media with being sort of like part of a right-wing kind of thing. They're like good people on both sides type of thing. I mean, are we seeing a sort of the Southern Poverty Law Center was trying to create narratives using these types of groups to shape American public opinion?
Yes. Look, I think what the Southern Poverty Law Center has said over the years is available for the world to see. It's on their website. It's in other forums. The indictment speaks for itself. I'm not going to talk outside the four corners of the indictment. It lays out what the grand jury found, and obviously there's a whole body of public information around what the Southern Poverty Law Center has done over the past several decades.
I mean, in some of these instances, these are groups that have been either they're fallen out of public view. I'm just wondering the legal theory of how, these payments allegedly went on to actually benefit the groups. Did you see the money go to the groups themselves rather than just the individuals who were paid informants, essentially? And then I have an off-topic after.
So look, I want to be careful to keep any comments that we make inside the indictment. And so what the indictment lays out is payments to individuals who had leadership positions within these organizations. If that's what the grand jury found. And so to the extent that those individuals receiving, one received over $1 million, okay, to the extent over several years, to the extent that there's any link between that individual receiving the money and benefits to that organization, that's not in the indictment. But because again, it's not that individual who's charged with a crime. It's that individual was a informant or what have you. And it's Southern Poverty Law Center that made those payments to the individual. But it wasn't, look, the payments were not made to these individuals in exchange for a service separate and apart from their work within these organizations. So, that's I think speaks for itself.
Just on an off-topic, obviously you've read the Atlantic article that's now a subject of a defamation lawsuit brought by
I absolutely did not read that article, but go ahead with your question.
Without, obviously it's in litigation now. Have you separately just heard any concerns, given your supervision over the FBI director, about any problems with drinking?
I have a lot of concerns, and my concerns are completely around the anonymous reporting that comes forth constantly. That reporters have an obligation to report, and they have due diligence that they're supposed to do. And when an entire article is based on anonymous sources, and there's things in the article suggesting, for example, apparently that senior DOJ personnel were informed of something, that's me. I wasn't informed. No one called me about that. So, like, listen, I did not read that article. It is a subject of litigation, but you know, I've already.
Whoa, Steph Gray says, Zach, what do you know about David Wilcock? People are saying he took his own life. I find that difficult to believe. I haven't heard from David Wilcock in quite some time. I know he used to watch my show. I don't know if he still does. He's done a couple of streams where he covered my reports, but God, I'll look into that. I can't imagine that he would take his own life. I mean, he's like a big figure in his field. I'll look into that. That's crazy.
They spent too much time talking about it. Next question. Go ahead.
On that, Todd, I'm sorry. The FBI director is on camera with the U.S. Olympic hockey team chugging a beer. I mean, do you think that that's appropriate conduct for the FBI director?
That has nothing to do with the article. I mean, look, there's complete hit pieces, and you guys are in this business, and you know what they look like, and the fact that you're asking repeated questions about them almost as an admission of such. But
okay, David Wilcock just posted yesterday. He said, I mean, he just did a live stream too, so I don't think that he took his own life. If David Wilcock is no longer alive, I would think that somebody took his life. But how unsurprising that the mainstream media attempts to use the hit piece against Kash Patel. Now, take this into account. That hit piece by The Atlantic was written just before the reveal of the takedown of the SPLC, just before the reveal of the unclassified documents we're about to look at in just a minute. Imagine what else may be coming, what else Kash Patel and the FBI and the DOJ may have up their sleeves waiting to reveal. And of course, the mainstream media is going to try to take them down.
When you have a bunch of people who are hiding behind closed curtains, saying things but not willing to say it publicly, and there are certain parts of the article that are blatantly false because apparently I was told something that I wasn't, it's suspicious. In the back.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Attorney General. Can you explain again what the fraud is here exactly? Are you saying it's illegal for the SPLC to pay money to people that are in hate groups, or something about the way this was done makes it illegal? Because it's not automatically illegal, is it?
No, that's right. It's a good question. So, and again, I summarized the indictment, and it's now public for everybody to read. But the Southern Poverty Law Center is a 501c3. Okay, they're required to, under the laws associated with a nonprofit, to have certain transparency and honesty in what they're telling donors they're going to spend money on, and what their mission statement is, and what they're raising money doing. And so, as the indictment points out,
oh my God, people all over David Wilcock's last stream are saying "rest in peace." Holy shit, he might be gone. Just heard the news that David passed. I can't believe it. I'm in shock. I have a hard time believing this story. Holy shit. I can't believe it. Wow. I'm going to have to obviously dig into this more. That's awful. Well, I guess thank you. Reportedly killed himself while law enforcement was there on the scene. Oh my God, Michelle, that's awful. Wow. Wow. Well, I suppose that we'll hear more about this. I guess I'll report on that. Yeah, he doesn't look very good. Yeah, gosh, that's, oof, man.
There's different ways that they raise money, and in no fundraising efforts that the investigation found did they say, oh, and by the way, we're going to give $1 million to the Ku Klux Klan. So that's fraud. So that's wire fraud. So, and then the bank fraud part of it is you have KYC. You have an obligation to tell your financial institution what the corporation or the entity that you're opening an account for does, and the allegations in the indictment are that these were fictitious companies that were set up, and so there was certain information sworn to by SPLC executives about what the entities were doing that we allege is false.
Can I just follow up on? Can I have one follow up, Mr.
Go ahead.
On the hiring of Joe DeGenova to work for the department, can you just tell us a little bit? I understand you went down to Florida, perhaps to take part in his swearing in or bring him on board. Can you explain why he's being brought back to the department after 40 years?
So, I mean, look, I think that everybody in this administration, whether it's Department of Justice or elsewhere, we're always looking for good people, and he's somebody who has a deep bench. As you said, he's been in this business for decades, and when we had the opportunity to ask him to join the team and help we readily did.
I have an on-topic and an off-topic, if you'll allow me. Are you?
All right, so it looks like yesterday in Boulder County, Colorado, Boulder County Communications received a 911 call at approximately 10:44 a.m., April 20th, regarding an unknown problem near 1400 Block Ridge Road. Emergency communications specialist who took the call suspected the caller was experiencing a mental health crisis. Deputies arrived at approximately 11:02. Made contact with a male outside the residence who was holding a weapon. Within minutes of the deputy's arrival, he used the weapon on himself. He was pronounced dead at the scene. They're not identifying him in this report right here, but apparently people all over X are saying this is true. David Wilcock has taken his own life. Wow, that's crazy. I never, ever would have expected that to happen. That is terrible. Rest in peace, David Wilcock.
Able to explain a little bit more about what led to this investigation? Were you guys tipped off by a former employee?
Now, if any of these journalists had ever done a lick of work in their life, they could easily go and find the evidence. This was well known. This was a tactic that the SPLC had used for many years, and previous investigations into this exact same type of activity had taken place in a number of different locations around the country. The FBI, the federal government, it had been announced that the SPLC was under investigation previously. That investigation ended up getting shut down. I think that maybe there were some fines that the SPLC paid. But the fact is that their tactics never wavered. And yes, this was fraudulent, but they've also now directly connected it to Charlottesville. That is an act of extreme violence, obviously. Terrible things happen there. The SPLC would perpetuate these violent extremist movements. They would actually make them as extreme as possible to justify their very existence, use that as a hook to solicit money from their donors, and then they would, of course, continue their grift.
Or how did you guys discover this?
No, I can't talk about that, but it's been going on for a long time. There was a time that it was shut down for a while during the last administration. I don't know why, and it was started again over the past year or so.
They shut it down during the Biden administration because they thought that it was no longer necessary. They assumed that Biden and the Dems were going to be able to stay in power. The deep state had once again taken control of the government. Now, of course, it's Trump 2.0, and they need to have a boogeyman. So Patriot Front, I'm really glad that guy mentioned that, because I would like to see if there was any transfer of funds into their accounts.
And that brings us to today.
Sorry, you mean the investigation began?
To legit be, we have been at war for the entirety of our lives. This is not anything new. It is merely now going offensive from our side, which is huge.
And before this administration, and then was shut down during the Biden administration?
That's my understanding. I don't have information beyond what I just said around that.
I wanted to ask about the John Brennan investigation. If you can explain why the career prosecutor who had been leading that investigation was removed, and if you have or had concerns that investigation is not moving quickly enough.
I don't have any concerns about that investigation. And again, the reporting around that really is just a source purely from leaks and not actually accurate reporting is not something I'm going to comment on and never will comment on.
Could I ask you just to clarify one thing? Obviously, the Bureau had a long relationship with the SPLC. Is it your understanding that the previous leaders at the Bureau knew this was happening and didn't view it as a crime, or is that the Bureau did not know this was happening?
It is my understanding that SPLC never told anybody in law enforcement that they were paying off the Ku Klux Klan, and I don't think that should surprise anybody.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Attorney General. I'd like you to both weigh in on a recent memo from the Office of Legal Counsel declaring the Presidential Records Act unconstitutional, so saying that presidents no longer need to preserve their documents or return them to the government. What do you say to critics who suggest this basically eliminates transparency and accountability around how White House operates, especially given how much time you guys are spending investigating the previous administration?
Well, look, I think there is no dispute that this administration in just 14 months has been a lot more transparent than the last administration or in any administration. So if critics are suggesting that somehow we're not being transparent, I don't find that credible in any way, shape, or form. As far as the recent OLC opinion regarding the PRA, that is something that has been heavily litigated in D.C. and elsewhere, and OLC issuing that is not the first, that's not the first place that you see that it's unconstitutional. I mean, I think there's a lot of places that you can go to think through why that is. The memo speaks for itself, and I don't have much to say about it beyond that.
Yeah. Do you want to weigh in on that?
The president has this pending billion-dollar lawsuit against the IRS. He sort of said that this is like he's negotiating with himself. How can you assure, is there anything you can do to assure the American people that taxpayer dollars are being protected? How are those negotiations being handled?
I'm most certainly not going to talk about ongoing litigation, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment about that case given its status right now.
Broadly, with the the various interests, the competing interests there, right? You have the president in the White House pressing obviously for some personal money, and then you have him being your boss. How do you sort of, just broadly speaking, how do you sort of handle that sort of issue?
I mean, we handle, the Department of Justice handles complicated decisions involving those type of issues every day, all day, and not just this Department of Justice, every department.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and shut it off there because it seems like at this point the press is not too interested in the fraud of the SPLC. They continue to try to go back to this, fake article about Kash Patel. Huge news, you guys. I'm going to make sure I bookmark that one. And I can't believe I'm not following the Department of Justice. I thought that I was. All right, now okay, I think I closed out the article related to the SPLC. Listen, before we continue, I got to mention a brief sponsorship from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, banks, as you know, not your friends. They can freeze your accounts. They can shut off your cards. They can lock you out of your money. They can do it overnight. Banks do not protect you. They control you, and that's why real financial freedom starts with ownership. So introducing the Rumble Wallet, a non-custodial wallet that's built for people who refuse to give up control. With Rumble Wallet, you don't just buy digital currency like Bitcoin and Tether. You can also own Tether Gold. That is real gold on the blockchain, and through Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars, each one fully allocated, verifiable by serial number, purity, and weight. It's not paper gold. It's not an IOU. This is real gold without bank vaults, storage fees, or gatekeepers. You can buy, sell, or move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That means even when traditional gold markets are closed. If you want, Tether Gold can also be redeemed for that physical metal right here. That is powerful. And when you support creators on Rumble, you can tip them directly using Rumble Wallet because it's peer-to-peer. It's totally outside the banking system. There's no permissions or middlemen or cancel button. It is your wallet permanently forever. Now, you can use the QR code on screen. You can go directly to wallet.rumble.com or just download it right from the App Store on your device. Thank you very much to Rumble. Appreciate it. All right. Now, a couple of thank yous over here on Rumble and Pilled as well. Let's see. AOB, no. I guess I need to jump back a little bit farther. So, okay, so, wow, thank you, guys. I really appreciate the generosity today. Patty Ninefinger says, I love you lots, Zach. Tolerate Lisa. I know you're joking. Thank you, Patty. Appreciate you, homie. PJH8790. Zach, my wife and I watch you every single night. You are not fake news from 5 to 7-ish every night. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. Thank you guys for tuning in to us. Also, Acox says, God bless. Thank you for that, my friend. Cyrus the Great says, this is effing huge. It truly is. Emerald Dragon says, let's effing go. And Denise Ann says, let's effing go. This is fantastic news, and I look forward to seeing many more such stories. To all of those who have been saying nothing is happening, what are you going to complain about now? Well, have no fear, Denise. They will continue to find something to complain about. CK Felt says, and people say nothing is happening. B. Seddons says, same as the wrap-up smear. Yep. AOB22 says, I need a young, handsome man to pinch me. I am dreaming. SPLC is going down. Jenny, Reclaim Your Sovereignty says, I am so happy to be experiencing this with you. Just wow. I am too, you guys. I'm so glad it happened while I was on the air. How cool is that? BDR1776 says, Morris D's nuts. That's right, Morris D's. And go ahead and open your mouth, Morris. Bootsy says, I match your $5 challenge and I raise it another 45. Zach, you are my favorite to watch. I wish I could contribute daily. I know I love your attitude and your humble realism and watch every day. Bootsy, very generous of you. Really appreciate that. And thank you for tuning in. That is, quite honestly, the most that I could ask you to do. Sabrado says, I never miss David's show. He is not suicidal. He talks for 3 hours or more every Sunday. If they say he killed himself, that's a lie. And I will tell you, I've never seen anything to indicate that David seemed to be suicidal. And I also find it very odd that David, being such a fixture in the UFO, UAP community, to allegedly take his own life, just as apparently the government seems on the verge of admitting everything that he's talked about for so many years. Very, very strange. Now, I saw people suggesting that in his last live that there were things that people were concerned about. I'm going to go and watch it after, tonight when I get done here, and maybe I'll see if I can't find some clips of things that people said that they were concerned about. But yeah, I find it almost incredulous to imagine that he would kill himself given the current circumstances of the world. So very, very, very sad. Yeah, and Wikipedia has updated his record to show that his death occurred yesterday. So near Nederland, Colorado, and Boulder, Colorado. Boulder Sheriff's Office, reported this mental health crisis. Now, here's the thing. It may be that David held a gun to his head and pulled the trigger, but that doesn't mean that he consciously wanted to kill himself. These people have the tools to quite literally drive someone crazy, to drive them to the point of insanity. Like my friend Isaac Cappy, when he jumped off that overpass, nobody else was there with him. I mean, the video exists. It shows him there and it shows him alone. But I think that Isaac was driven to that by them using tools of voice-to-skull technology. And so yes, there we go. Gizmo's mom says it right there. Look it up. Voice of God, CIA. They can make people do things. David was so excited to be alive at this time. Yeah, that is the only way that I could believe that the gun in David's hand would have, been used to kill him. Because, yeah, V2K, voice-to-skull, voice of God, they do have the ability to do that. And with these, electronic weapons, they can quite literally scramble somebody's thoughts. I just can't believe that David would have done that on his own. MK Ultra just a little bit different but it's actually possible that V2K and voice to skull, voice of God technology could have been developed during MK Ultra. But, the MK Ultra program and the mental breakdown sessions that they would put people through, that is one thing entirely. I would suggest, just the mind manipulation programs that are being developed by the government, taking place, whether it's MK Ultra, MK Artichoke, all sorts of things. But, here's the thing, guys. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not suicidal and I will never take my own life. All right. Now, it's so appropriate that we're also going to talk about the takedown of ActBlue, because I think that the money is really what we're talking about here. The SPLC had access to millions upon millions of dollars, not only in donor funds, but also in government funds. There would also be a series of other NGOs that would also provide them with major sources of funding. Clearly, the SPLC was connected to the larger deep state narrative manipulation market. And the ActBlue was responsible for funneling money into the campaign accounts of political candidates and political office holders around the United States. Now, there has recently been a development because an interim report was revealed showing that multiple House committees had looked into ActBlue, and they all found the exact same thing. Not a lot of new information here. Once again, it is simply just the reinforcement of information that we already knew to be true. So you had investigations that were done by House Judiciary, Administration, and Oversight Committees. And yesterday, they declared that all of them found evidence of quote, a lax approach to fraud prevention. This, of course, coincided with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's lawsuit that was filed yesterday. Now, as a result of these investigations into ActBlue, we already were aware of the exit of their legal compliance staffers. All of them quit because they were aware of the illegal activity that ActBlue was engaging in. Now, in this interim report, these 3 GOP-led committees revealed that 5 top ActBlue legal personnel all invoked their right against self-incrimination. When they were questioned, they all pled the fifth. They refused to answer the questions of investigators. Their unwillingness to testify only amplifies the concerns of the committees. Now, ActBlue has funneled hundreds of millions of dollars during every single election cycle, and they exclusively push that money into the accounts of Democrat candidates, Democrat political groups, as well as a whole variety of other left-wing causes. I wouldn't be surprised if ActBlue money probably was sent into the hands of the SPLC. For a long time, we've been talking about ActBlue. We know about the smurfing, their alleged ties to foreign money, fraudulent contributions. They've always denied wrongdoing. But now it's becoming far more difficult for them to keep saying that. They have fewer and fewer employees that can actually make that claim. And this new congressional report has asserted that ActBlue has a, quote, lax approach to fraud prevention, even though it has detected at least 22 significant fraud campaigns on their platform in recent years. And that includes, most importantly, several funding sources from foreign donors. Those foreign donors may be individuals, they may be governments, they may be foreign intelligence agencies. I mean, the possibilities here are quite literally endless. But the report also detailed what they called the collapse of ActBlue's legal and compliance team in the months right after the 2024 election. This included the termination of their general counsel, Darren Hurwitz, the abrupt resignation of interim general counsel, Aaron Ting, and the abrupt resignation of legal counsel, Zain Ahmad. Every single one of them got to ActBlue, saw what was going on, and said, I cannot be a part of this. There was simply no way for them to scrub the dishes. By March of last year, they stated that the last remaining employee on the legal compliance team had also submitted her resignation. So the judiciary conducted 5 depositions with both current and former ActBlue legal personnel. And again, every single one of them pled the fifth. Every single one of them refused to answer any questions. The staff report came on the exact same day that we announced yesterday. Attorney General Ken Paxton had sued ActBlue for allegedly misleading public statements about their practices and for allowing foreign and fraudulent donations to be made. Again, if you missed yesterday, Ken Paxton's team, as they were investigating ActBlue, bought a gift card, set up a straw account, donated under a name that was not theirs, and right there, ActBlue accepted it. That was a crime, and it was totally outside of the boundaries of what they were legally supposed to be doing, and it directly conflicted with their claims of having stringent practices in place to ensure that what the team was attempting to do would not be possible. The radical left has relied on ActBlue as a way to funnel foreign donations and dark money into their political campaigns to subvert our laws and compromise the integrity of our elections, Paxton said. ActBlue lied to Congress and to the American people, and I will ensure that justice is served. It has blatantly ignored state law and prohibits deceptive practices, and it must pay for its illegal conduct. Fair elections are the foundation of our democracy, and I will work to ensure no illegal campaign donations fly under the radar. Let me just point out here for you guys, if the ActBlue money funneling operation is killed, then that means that the largest single significant portion of money going into the political accounts of Democrat politicos and candidates, it's over. It's done. Absolutely dried up like an 86-year-old widow. All right. Now, we also have this information about the CEO of ActBlue. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the CEO of ActBlue is implicated in this, but this is actually a story from September of last year. So one of the ways that ActBlue would funnel their money would be to put it into real estate. Now, there was a report showing that they would use their money, donor money, to commit real estate fraud and facilitate money laundering. Now, Sean Taylor, you may remember him. He used to be the assistant police chief in a Tennessee town. He's now a research analyst for the Election Fairness Institute. He's actually been working with Arizona Senator Mark Fincham. Mark's people just reached out to me. I'm going to have him on the show here in the very near future. They're all probing the activities of ActBlue. So I thought that it was time to revisit this portion of the story, because this is another aspect of the criminal activity that ActBlue has perpetuated. So law enforcement conducted an interview with Taylor, and they said that, wow, there is a lot more going on here than we realized. He alleged what amounts to hundreds of billions of dollars in mortgage money fraud was committed for the benefit of ActBlue, and then they would funnel that money through NGOs and into the coffers of Democrat politicos. Some of it made its way into organizations that actively oppose the Republican Party, and of course, President Trump in particular. When Taylor was asked how much money was involved, he said, "We're talking trillions by the time you get done looking at it." Now, law enforcement today is who conducted this interview with Sean Taylor, and they're saying, well, we're not making any accusations about individuals involved with these transactions, but it does appear to be highly unusual. And, of course, Sean Taylor has done his research. He's got all the receipts. He spent thousands of hours combing through reports on LexisNexis. He said he went through a series of examples, chapter and verse, where homes of connected individuals sometimes sold for hundreds of times what they're worth. Now, you may remember an interview that I did with a man by the name of John Thaler some years ago. John Thaler was alleging that the Mexican mafia, the drug cartels, were using this exact same type of fraudulent scheme. So what you would have is somebody like a Katie Hobbs who would sell her home, and the home would be purchased for 10 times the asking amount. And of course, if somebody offers you a couple of extra zeros on the end of your asking price for your home, you're not going to turn them down, but all of that money can then go to you tax-free. As an example, if you've owned Thaler, Jake, John Thaler was his name, Thayler. Now, if you've owned your home for long enough, then when you sell it, any profit that you make off of it is tax-free. It just goes to you. So let's say that someone has promised you that if you do X, Y, and Z, you will then be the recipient of a great offer on your home at, such and such a date, at which time the home is purchased from you. They write you a big check, and it's all above board. But at the end of the day, it's actually money laundering. So he said some of these people were receiving many, many times the value of their homes. One example is Regina Wallace-Jones. This is the CEO of ActBlue. She owned a property at 1257 Runnymede Street in East Palo Alto, California. Now, it's a modest home by California standards, single family. It's got a footprint of about 2,600 feet. It's bigger than my house, I'll tell you that much. But this listing for it on Zillow had an asking price of $1.7 million. Now, on May 21st of 2002, Miss Wallace-Jones, along with somebody named Stefford Jones, probably her husband, they bought the home for $689,500. But on the same day, Regina Wallace-Jones and Stefford Jones received a loan of $651,500 from Wells Fargo. Additionally, Regina Wallace-Jones received 2 additional mortgage loans, totaling $651,600 and $552,253, both also from Wells Fargo Home Mortgage. So on the same date, the sale price was listed at, get this, $68,950,000, with 2 unlisted sources providing cash loans of $10,035,000 and $55,125,000. Get that, okay? Altogether, the house was assessed at a value of $979,000. Regina Wallace-Jones and Stefford obtained 7 mortgages. Those 7 mortgages totaled $67,667,323. That is nearly 70 times the value of the property itself. But it gets worse. And I also want to remind you, this is 24 years ago, 2002. In December of 2004, Stefford Jones and Regina Wallace Jones obtained a $160,000 mortgage loan from Wells Fargo. And then on January 13th, 2004, they received another $250,000 mortgage from JP Morgan Chase. On July 15th of 2015, Stefford Jones sold the Runnymede home to himself and his wife using 3 mortgage loans from Wells Fargo, totaling $565,000, $74,800, and $565,000. Now, Taylor told law enforcement today that these 5 simultaneous filings on the same date, May 21st of 2002, that should have been a huge red flag for somebody at the bank. The only way that makes sense, you guys, is if somebody at the bank was involved in whatever type of fraudulent scheme they're doing. And I have to be honest, I still don't understand exactly how this makes any sense. So 3 of those bore identical sales prices of $689,500. However, they all had different loan amounts or different borrowers, different people that were actually taking the money from Wells Fargo. And then there were 2 other sale prices and loan amounts that likewise obviously should have raised a red flag. Taylor said that these multiple mortgage requests appear to show an intent to cycle fraudulent proceeds. He said that the fact that the LexisNexis report on the Runnymede home showed 13 to 14 deed transfers that were recorded in 272 months indicates possible money laundering. He also obtained receipts from all of the transactions that he investigated. The address at 1257 Runnymede actually had the property description changed on October 22nd, 2024. Instead of showing the home as a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, single-family home built in 2001, it was now showing a 1-story home with 2 baths built in 2016. The initial description from 2001 showed a 2-story home. So Taylor thinks that the house description was changed to call its character into question, but he has all the receipts and he can prove the description was changed. Now let's fast forward to 2024. By now, Regina Wallace Jones is no longer the CEO of ActBlue, allegedly owned another home at 1208 Cameron Lane. This was in Daly City, California. That was a $6,000 home, also purchased with her husband on the 19th of July in 2005. After that sale, a sale was recorded for $60 million, accompanied by a $6 million hard cash loan. On that exact same date, another $60 million was received with a $48 million hard cash loan. The home at that address was described as a 2-story home with 2 bedrooms and 2 baths built in 1985. Suddenly, on November 11th of 2024, roughly a week after the presidential election, the activity at that address disappeared. And now it's described as a 1-story, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home built in 1956 with a much smaller lot. So following the ActBlue official with what appears to be questionable mortgage activity is No Call Paulding, who is the director of operations and controller at ActBlue. Paul Ding operates out of 27 Old Maids Lane in Glastonbury, Connecticut. Also, according to LexisNexis, that house is worth $502,500. Yet somehow she was able to secure a $50 million sale with an additional $40 million loan. So the investigation into ActBlue and these seemingly magic mortgages all began back in Tennessee. This is where Sean was a police officer. He said it's fascinating how it all ties together. Our readers might wonder how a former police chief in Tennessee was able to dig into the behind-the-scenes hijinks involving these ActBlue officials. Well, through the research Taylor was doing, he was able to find and prove that ActBlue is acting as a funding arm for many different nonprofits. Many of them obviously are going to be anti-Trump, and they are using this sophisticated money laundering operations primarily through these so-called magic mortgages. He said this is the money that is funding the swamp and everyone involved, including USAID, the Lincoln Project, and many more. Now, among these NGOs, PACs, and many others that benefit from ActBlue's financial shenanigans are labor unions, teachers unions, realtors associations, Planned Parenthood, the Sierra Club, gay rights organizations, and Black Lives Matter, to name a few. Now, ActBlue also, of course, funds the Democratic National Committee. They benefit Democrats like those you know of, Elizabeth Warren, Jamie Raskin, AOC, Bernie Sanders, lots of far lefties. And Taylor laid out a series of loans and hard cash or origin unknown loans that he explained are what people do to take out these magic mortgages, and then they launder that money to nonprofits and ActBlue. As an example, that property at 1257 Runnymede Street was continually transferred back and forth between the owners. It's listed as being worth $689,000. However, in the exact same date, they do a sale for $68.9 million with a $55 million mortgage and a $125,000 hard cash loan. And then on that exact same date, it sells again for $68.9 million with a $10.3 million cash loan. In other words, it's sold twice on the same day with two different loan amounts. Make that make sense. I still don't quite understand what is going on, but you look at these sales transactions and you know something isn't right. Lisa, let me ask you, what would you think if you saw, no, it's not an accounting error, King Rat, it's not an accounting error, because we're talking about real loans coming from real banks, real money, and real transfers of deeds back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There's nothing erroneous about this. All of this is being done intentionally. So Sean says that this isn't the he isn't the only one who knows about this magic mortgage scheme. I guess the House Judiciary Committee had released a report back in April of last year talking about how ActBlue had loosened their fraud protection rules back in 2024. And this is what the report that just came out today said. Based upon what Taylor's able to recover, it's pretty hard to imagine that they couldn't get any more lenient. So these internal documents at ActBlue show that their executives and staff were all aware of the foreign and domestic fraudulent actors, that they were exploiting the program, but they never took it seriously. This is what they were supposed to clean up, but they never did. But it is eventually why all of their lawyers had to leave. All right, now, ActBlue has other issues besides the magic mortgages. According to a Connecticut Inside investigator, FEC records examined show a series of small money donations allegedly made to ActBlue. This is the smurfing phenomenon. They've never stopped it from happening. You've got hundreds of thousands of dollars being donated by elderly people who don't have jobs. It's really not them, though. It's simply their names that are being used over and over and over again. So I can't even tell you all of the crimes that have taken place at ActBlue, but I sincerely hope that this is leading to a much larger investigation and a series of indictments. I can't imagine that the current FBI is not aware of this. I think a lot of people believe that simply because we're not hearing about things before they happen, it means that something isn't happening. But hopefully that press conference that we just watched about the SPLC being raided and the confirmation from Todd Blanche that the investigation is very much ongoing, you can see that you're not going to hear about these things until the moment the DOJ is ready to tell you. All right. Now, let me say thank you very much to Q Patriot Angel, who says too many things happening to consider all true. 1, California officers murdered in MX2, SPLC indicted now, and David Wilcock suicide. California officers murdered in MX2. I don't know about that one. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm not aware of the murder of those officers. I hadn't heard about that. we'll have to look into that. Well, let's get to the meat and potatoes here. All right, so what I was talking about in the opening of the show and on the thumbnail in regards to elections, if we go back to before the 2020 election, when all of us were very keyed in to the vulnerabilities that existed, we were not alone in realizing that these vulnerabilities were real. In fact, the U.S. Intel Authority, the apparatus of intelligence in the United States, they were also aware of it. And now the confirmation that we're getting is from another newly declassified memo that Tulsi Gabbard has made available to us. And what it shows is that the American public was 100% correct about just how insecure our elections were. Now, this information was hidden. They LARPed to our faces, gaslighting us about how safe and secure the elections were. They did it to ensure that Joe Biden could be slid in there. And the knowledge of just how insecure the elections were in the United States was well in advance of the 2020 election. Several months before the 2020 election, we had this U.S. intelligence product. They issued a secret but stark warning that foreign adversaries had the capability to compromise America's voting infrastructure. And they raised specific concerns about just how vulnerable our voter registration databases were. And these are the same databases that we recently learned were 100% penetrated by China and Iran both. So the National Intelligence Council and their concerns were so extensive that officials personally briefed President Donald Trump at the White House in February of 2020. And that is according to photos that Just the News has obtained. In those photos, it shows that the top CIA, FBI, and Homeland Security officials all joined the National Intelligence Council analysts to be there to inform the president. Now, obviously, even though we knew just how insecure the elections were, that meeting and the findings of the National Intelligence Council was never fully divulged. The public was never told. And that was even after the intelligence community took in evidence proving that China had already gained access to voter registration data. In multiple states, we've also learned about the fake driver's licenses that were being shipped into this country. And of course, this was all in a bid to ensure that Joe Biden could be crowned the winner in the 2020 election. From this intelligence product dated January 15th, 2020, we judged the U.S. adversaries, including at a minimum Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, as well as non-state groups. They have the ability to compromise U.S. election infrastructure for the 2020 presidential election, the exact opposite of safe and secure. Adversaries gaining access to U.S. election-related systems could disrupt the voting process, steal sensitive data, and undermine confidence in election results, which is exactly what they did. But we do not know whether any of them have specific plans to manipulate election-related systems. Now, the document was declassified by Director of National Intelligence, my gal, Tulsi Gabbard, who continues to be the MVP in the administration, releasing examples from the intelligence community showing that they both suppressed and misused intelligence in an effort to gaslight the American people. Now, officials say that an ongoing second Trump administration investigation has not yet found evidence that vote counting machines were directly compromised in the 2020 election, but the memo shows how such machines could be vulnerable to intrusions in the future and made clear that voter registration databases that were breached by China and Iran are easy targets. Now, we remember last year, Tulsi Gabbard and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence lawfully took possession of voting machines from Puerto Rico. It's my understanding that that action will be used to prove the electronic voting machines in America can all be hacked, and it's just a matter of showing exactly how they were. Now, this memo was prepared by at that time, National Intelligence Cyber Chief Christopher Porter, and it's become part of a broader body of evidence which shows our election systems are vulnerable to hacking, breaching, and manipulations, that they previously chose not to acknowledge to us, even though we were saying that at the time as well. Of course, after the 2020 election, many people inside the intelligence community, senior officials, insisted on the historical security of that 2020 election. They downplayed any of our concerns about such vulnerabilities. And as an example, members of the Election Infrastructure Government Coordinating Council Executive Committee released a mid-November 2020 joint statement declaring that November 3rd was the most secure election in American history. And one of those people who sat on that committee, Chris Krebs, the director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, actually testified to the Senate, and he lied under oath. He testified after the election that he approved CISA's publication of a joint statement from the election security community reflecting that community's consensus that the 2020 election was the most secure in U.S. history. Now, Chris Krebs has already been accused by the Trump White House of being a significant bad faith actor who weaponized and abused the government authority that he wielded. Krebs' misconduct involved the censorship of disfavored speech, which implicated the 2020 election in fraudulent actions, and then also the COVID-19 pandemic. Porter spoke with Just the News, and he said those assurances did not reflect the government's actual assessment of just how vulnerable Americans' election infrastructure was. Iran and China, we know, did gain access to voter registration data, but those breaches were suppressed until November of 2021. That was when Iranian hackers were indicted. And again, in March 2026, just last month, when Just the News obtained the first declassified documents acknowledging that Beijing had penetrated voter registration data. What's shocking is how uncontroversial some of these findings are to professionals. It's obviously no secret that China and Iran compromised election equipment for a variety of intelligence purposes. It's also not controversial to them at the time that these systems had these major technical vulnerabilities. Of course, they were not vulnerabilities. They were features that were built into these systems. I think that everybody here believes the reason we never actually heard, or the reason they never admitted it, is because they needed those vulnerabilities to exist, because the very existence of them meant that they could be exploited, and that meant that our elections could be stolen. So Porter said every agency concurred on these findings, but because it was seen as potentially aiding the president's re-election campaign, there was an effort to damage him politically by refusing to share the declassified report with the public. It's important for people to recognize that this is not normal behavior for the intelligence community. Most officers would never do something like this. In my 20 years of public service, the politicized efforts by the CIA and others to conceal that truth about the threats to the 2020 presidential election are unprecedented, and even today shock me when I retrace everything that's happened. Now, Porter said much of this information was ordered declassified by President Trump, but it was the CIA leaders who refused to publicly release a report on the suspected Chinese threats to election infrastructure. The President of the United States personally ordered this information declassified and shared with the public because he thought election integrity was so important. But despite that, CIA leaders at the time refused to declassify. Isn't that scary? The idea that the CIA, which is theoretically under the President of the United States, they could say, sorry, President, we are not going to do what you want us to do because we want the vulnerabilities to exist. Let me say thank you to Angie K. Zach, do you recall the state Senate hearings in Arizona with Liz? Yes. She brought in the guy in the mortgage fraud scheme. She was kicked out of office for making the claims. Yes, it was the same guy. And they absolutely did Liz dirty. And the fact of the matter is that John Thayer wasn't lying. John Thayer was telling the truth. And it was too much truth, and that's why they kicked Liz out of office. It was really unfortunate. Liz has never forgiven John. I don't think it was really John's fault. I think that perhaps there could have been something that was done differently to present the information to the legislature, and then that would have secured her position and her safety. But, you know, she tried to do the right thing, and they punished her for it. So now, years later, the CIA even went so far as to claim that this report has never been declassified. Even their own record of its declassification has been removed from the system. But following the president's lawful orders is necessary for the proper functioning of our democracy. When I raised these concerns at the time, the CIA, ODNI, Other agencies, even the Inspector General, retaliated against me. They removed my ability to communicate with Congress on election issues. Porter said, I am so thankful for DNI Gabbard for getting the truth of these matters out, which for years have been kept hidden from the public and even from the president. So last week, Chris Fox, the intelligence community's new inspector general, opened a full investigation into whether or not Porter's concerns were internally squashed and whether he was mistreated as a whistleblower. I think it's pretty obvious he was. Well before those China and Iran hacks, the January 2020 National Intelligence Committee's assessment warned clearly that voter registration databases, along with poll books that kept a list of authorized voters, were among the most vulnerable to hacking and manipulation by foreign powers. Let me also just say the release of this information by the ODNI really backs up the government's assessment that we need access to voter registration databases. We must be able to confirm their proper maintenance and ensure that they haven't been loaded up with a bunch of people who don't actually exist, or that they are kept secure so that they can't be manipulated in the future. So I certainly hope that this example of an intelligence product can be used by the Department of Justice in the 30 lawsuits that they have currently ongoing. We need access to this stuff, and we need that access now. Now, continuing here, we assess that centralized election-related data repositories like voter registration databases, poll books, and official election websites are most vulnerable to exploitation, and adversaries could use access to these systems to disrupt the election process. I'm also immediately reminded of Jenna Griswold, the Secretary of State in Colorado, and the fact that she published online the passwords to all of the election websites in the state of Colorado. Very easily, all of those databases could have been manipulated. They may have, and we just haven't been able to get to the bottom of it. States house their voter registration databases predominantly in internet-connected systems that are designed for easy access because maintaining up-to-date voter registration records is a nearly continuous process. Adversaries could alter data to potentially prevent individual voters or groups of voters from voting, which causes delays on election day or even forcing voters to use provisional ballots. Adversaries could also use the registration data, which in some cases is also publicly available or for purchase, to tailor other interference or influence networks. Now, through the intelligence agencies and their conclusion that vote tabulators or systems that displayed results were locally vulnerable, they ultimately assessed it would be difficult for adversaries to manipulate on a wide enough scale to alter the election. However, they warned that such intrusions could undermine public confidence in the election. Now, let me also say, simply because these databases are going to be maintained locally, I don't think that if somebody had the design to influence the results of an election, that they would allow its local nature to stop them from doing so. I mean, think about how many computers exist in the world. Think about how many sophisticated systems are available out there. You could have a room of 1,000 hackers operating in 1,000 different jurisdictions, and they would very quickly and easily be able to manipulate information like this. Free Castle, thank you very much for rating the stream, buddy. Appreciate you. And thank you very much to anybody who's coming on over from Free Castle stream. That's great. All right. Now, in this January 2020 memo, the process of this intelligence repeated the fact that China had successfully gained access to that voter registration data. And it wasn't in one location. You know, just backing up what I just said, the fact that it's local, the fact that it's on a state-by-state level, it doesn't matter. They were successfully able to gain access to that information in multiple jurisdictions. The intelligence about those Chinese intrusions did eventually find its way into a number of different finished intelligence projects, including at least one presidential daily brief. Now, the January intelligence memo shows how that data gained by the Chinese from those hacks could then be exploited. The agencies focused on the assessed vulnerabilities of the poll books, the voter databases, and the local election websites from those foreign intrusions. machines that record or count votes, especially the ones that have no paper backups, are particularly vulnerable to intrusions. Adversaries who obtain physical access to voting machines could alter how they function, manipulate the data on them, they could install malware, and the intelligence community ultimately did not believe that successful intrusions into these systems would present a threat to certified election results, even if reporting of election results was disrupted. They said tabulated results are stored independently of copy displays on resulted websites, which investigations of malicious activity could delay those results and introduce public uncertainty about the validity of vote counts. However, I think that everybody knows once you've got access to this stuff, it becomes extremely easy to influence the results of an election. Think about 2020, how many of those election results were reported and then counts of votes were flipped, taken from President Trump and then added to the totals of Joe Biden. If we look back at January 2021, the Intelligence Community Analytic Ombudsman, tasked with ensuring objectivity in these intelligence reports, they conducted a review of the spy community's handling of Russian and Chinese meddling in the 2020 election. And he concluded that analysts in the intelligence community downplayed China's actions because they had a disdain for the, quote, vulgarian Trump and did not want to support the policies and priorities of the administration towards China with which they personally disagreed. So they let their own personal hatred of President Trump whitewash the efforts of a foreign adversary and the efforts they took to inject themselves into our election system here, by nature of that fact, making it less secure. There were other Chinese efforts we've described in the past to influence the 2020 election. All of it was buried. The same with Iranian efforts. There was a confidential human source who told FBI counterintelligence in the summer of 2020, before the election even happened, that the Chinese Communist government was seeking to meddle in the impending election because they wanted to help then candidate Joe Biden. There was no such similar activity that was happening on behalf of President Trump. If we look at every single one of these reports, every single intelligence product, everything that's being released, all of it without fail was directly put in place to assist Joe Biden. Joe Biden was already compromised by various assets of the Chinese government. It makes so much more sense that they would want Joe Biden to be in power than Donald Trump, because they would have a much easier time getting him to do what they wanted him to do. All of this is now, of course, being made public, but China is not the only example of this. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a March 2021 assessment where several agencies unanimously agreed that Russia sought to hurt then candidate Biden, while Iran worked to harm then President Trump in 2020. But they never bothered to say anything about China. They simply left China out of it because, by their estimation, China was something that would give President Trump a win, and they simply could not allow that to happen. These people hated President Trump so much that they were willing to allow a foreign adversary to gain access to our election system and to influence the minds of the American people. We already knew that the election system wasn't secure, but they didn't need to make it any worse. All right, before we continue, next we have a story about Anna Paulina Luna and the Save America Act. But right now, here's a quick message for parents and grandparents in the audience. You guys know America is hitting a major milestone this year. It is our 250th birthday, 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever known. It's the perfect time to teach your kids about what is so important about America, not just the fun stuff, baseball, fireworks, hot dogs, but the things that really, truly matter. There is a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday. It's honestly a great way to introduce these subjects to your kids about how America began, who the founding fathers were, what it was that they risked, why those ideas that they were fighting for mattered then and still matter today. This guide is going to send those kids back to the moment when the brave men of that time signed the Declaration of Independence. They did so knowing full well they were risking their lives for freedom, and it's going to break it down in a way that kids can actually understand and enjoy. It's not going to water it down. It's not going to make it feel like boring schoolwork. But if you care about raising kids who know where this country came from and why it's worth preserving, why it's worth fighting for, even to this day, this is something you're going to want to grab. The best part is it's completely free with this special offer. All you do is pay $2 for shipping and handling. So just head to freeusabirthday.com. That's freeusabirthday.com. And that Kid's Guide to America's 250th birthday is there for your kids today, because America's story matters. So make sure the next generation knows it. Thank you very much to Rumble and America's 250th birthday. Thank you also to 24 Diane Sharp. Thank you, Zach, for all your hard work. I love your voice, your impersonations, and your infectious laugh. Keep up the good work. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay. Also, thank you so much to Moon Baby for starting a cookie fight. Thank you for 1, 2, 3 cookies. Thank you to Sean Joe for 2 more cookies. Thank you to Moon Baby for 2 more. Thank you to Sean Joe for 2 more. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says Devin Nunes departing Trump media to focus on Intel oversight role. You mean that Devin Nunes is going back into the Trump administration? That is great. Darla says, finally getting to the good part of this movie. Thank you, Zach and Lisa. You always bring it for us. I appreciate you, Darla. Thank you, Filter Dog, who says David Wilcock, 53, prominent UFO researcher, author, and disclosure advocate, has reportedly died of suicide yesterday near Nederland, Colorado. And then he did actually share a tweet. I did see that. Yeah, I mean, it looks like David is gone. That is tragic. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. He says Trump's revenge for both sides hoax. Also, Zach, they can take control of your mind without all the abuse stuff, and you will never know it unless you want to know it. I agree with you there. However, I think that David Wilcock was one of those people who was aware of that as well. So the only way that I think that they could have done that is through the use of some type of advanced technology. No Thanks Joe says, thank you, Lisa and Zach. Here we go. It's a start. Thank you guys for reporting. God bless. Be safe. I appreciate you, homie. Filter Dog says, so the white supremacists in Charlottesville in 2017 were actually being paid by the leftist group, the SPLC. That is exactly it. One Thunder, thank you for the can, and Mia Tua, thank you for the can as well. Yeah, SPLC was quite literally funding the organization that was planning the Unite the Right march in Charlottesville. The guy who was actually in charge of it. All right, so listen to this. Anna Paulina Luna says that John Thune is not even considering the Save America Act. I saw a clip from him yesterday, and he said, we got a couple of things to do. If there's time, we'll get to the Save America Act. I cannot believe the balls on this guy. So remember, they took 2 weeks off. And they said, well, we'll figure out the Save America Act when we get back. Now they've been back for a week and they still haven't done shit. All right. So Anna Paulina Luna writes on X, just so America knows, after 2 weeks recess, John Thune is no longer considering the Save America Act. They've been dragging their feet on this for months. The only thing that America wants them to focus on is the Save America Act. The House has already said, we will not consider any bills sent to us by the Senate other than the Save America Act. President Trump says he's not going to sign anything else until then. But John Thune says that there are other pressing stuff for us to do. He has some kind of a relationship with Punchbowl News, and he has, I don't know, they're always reporting directly from him. The Senate will come off of the Save America Act this week and may not return to it anytime soon, if at all, when they start voting on the ICE Border Patrol budget resolution. Save will no longer be the pending business. That means Thune would need to hold another procedural vote to restart floor debate. Thune does not commit to holding a vote to get back onto the Save America Act after the budget resolution and FISA reauthorization are done. So that is quite literally the truth. Anna Paulina Luna is absolutely on point here. I don't know what other pressing stuff they may have. This is the most pressing issue. But yeah, John Thune has essentially killed the Save America Act in the Senate. So in another post, Luna issued a stark warning to Thune: no voter ID, no FISA. And here's the thing, in the House, they have the votes to be able to successfully stop FISA from continuing. Mike Lee also publicly said, when Americans want one thing, the Save America Act, and the swamp wants another, FISA 702 reauthorization without reforms, the Senate GOP should side with the people, not the swamp. So why is that so difficult? And I believe we actually have a video from, yes, Mike Lee. Let's take a look.
The American people want the Save America Act. The swamp wants FISA 702 reauthorized without any meaningful reforms. The Senate is doing it exactly backwards. We've got to get back on the Save America Act. We've got to get it passed. And if one's going to take precedence over the other, it sure as heck shouldn't be the one that Americans hate and the DC swamp wants. Let's get back to work on the Save America Act. That's what the American people want.
Yeah, that is the only thing that we want. Well, here's the deal. At this point, if John Thune will not address the Save America Act, Congress is effectively dead in the water. They're not going to be able to pass anything else. Now, I don't know what the process is to get rid of John Thune. I've suggested previously that J.D. Vance could come to the Senate and take control of the Senate from John Thune because effectively he is the president of the Senate. But he is, that's not happening right now. We've got J.D. Vance heading back out to Pakistan to continue negotiations with Iran. I don't know that there is enough support within Senate Republicans to hold a vote to remove John Thune, to suggest that they have no confidence in him. But I don't have any confidence in him. I don't know anybody who does have confidence in him. Let me see. Good to see you, Bill. No, number one Indiana dad says, joined late, but not too late to accept the challenge. Thank you for what you do. Wife has digressed. Oh, buddy, I'm so sorry to hear that. Now in a chair during the day. Life isn't fair, my friend. Hug your wife every day. Be safe. Man, my heart goes out to you. I'm still praying for you guys, and I'm so sad that this is what you're dealing with. If you guys would, everybody, continue to pray for number one Indiana dad and his wife. They're really... she's got some health issues, and he's taking care of her, and it's definitely something that's weighing heavily on him. But I know that he loves her, and I know that he's going to continue to be there for her. And at the end of the day, he's right. Hug your wife. Make sure everybody here remembers that every day you have together is one that you were not promised. So I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry to hear that. All right, we've also got some new information. Apparently, a White House employee under Joe Biden was writing emails fawning over Fani Willis. So these are staffers who were praising Fani Willis for the efforts that she was undertaking to bring that racketeering case against President Trump. One of them in an email called her an icon as they were directly assisting with this now failed prosecution. Now, we learned this because emails have been obtained by Senate investigators, and they've been revealed. Now, these emails are from 2023. They were provided to Just the News, and it shows that, yes, in fact, the Biden White House was actively supporting Fani Willis throughout the entirety of her attempted prosecution of President Trump. And, this was all to try to undercut President Trump's ability to get elected in 2024. If they couldn't put him in jail, if they couldn't bankrupt him, then at the very least, they wanted to damage him. So Beth Mueller was an associate White House counsel, and she sent this email in August of 2023, flagging that House Judiciary sent a letter to Fulton County District Attorney regarding that indictment against President Trump. The chairman of House Judiciary, Jim Jordan, told Fani Willis at that time it was noteworthy that just 4 days before the indictment, you launched a new campaign fundraising website that highlighted your investigation into the president. Additionally, the forewoman of the special grand jury you convened to investigate President Trump earlier this year bragged during an unusual media tour about her excitement at the prospect of subpoenaing President Trump and getting to swear him in. So these emails are being made public today at a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing. It was going live earlier. I'm sure that we'll get some more and we'll talk about them tomorrow, but it's all part of the Arctic Frost investigation. Chairman Chuck Grassley also learned that the FBI had a separate investigation going after senators in the same way that they had in Arctic Frost going after members of the House. That is something that we will also go over in greater detail tomorrow. But Chuck Grassley said that the investigative work of this committee is necessary because during the entire Biden administration, my Democratic colleagues didn't lift a finger to investigate this political rot. They protected the treachery of the Biden-Harris regime, and now you'll hear them wanting to continue sweeping this under the rug. But don't listen to them. They've lost all credibility on this matter. So the Biden White House and the Biden DOJ closely coordinated with Fani Willis and her lover, Nathan Wade. Mueller followed up with Mueller. I don't know. Beth Mueller followed up that original email where she said, for those tracking, Fani Willis sent a response to House Judiciary that is detailed in the following story. In that letter that she sent back to Jim Jordan, Fani Willis said, your attempt to invoke congressional authority to intrude upon and interfere with an active criminal case in Georgia is flagrantly at odds with the Constitution. There is absolutely no support for Congress purporting to second-guess or somehow supervise an ongoing Georgia criminal investigation and prosecution. How wrong she was. That violation of Georgia's sovereignty is offensive and will not stand. On that exact same day, a senior legislative affairs advisor by the name of Rachel Martinez, also at the Biden White House in the Office of Legislative Affairs, chimed in to, again, shower praise on Fani Willis. She said, Fani Willis is an icon. I can't help but to stan, which means that she's like a huge fan. Memos from Willis's office, we've already seen earlier this year through an open records request, provided a fairly extensive piece of evidence to date that the Fulton County prosecutor was directly coordinating extensively with the Justice Department and the Biden White House, as well as plenty of Democrats on the January 6th committee. There was a number of actions overt taken by the Biden White House to allow Fani Willis and her team to interview former officials from the Trump administration, all of it making it much easier. We also had the invite to the White House from the Biden Justice Department, and they wanted her to apply for a $2 million sole source grant in 2022 while she was doing this investigation. It was part of more than $18 million in federal funding that she and her office received during that time. And then, of course, Nathan Wade, he also billed Fulton County for an interview with D.C. White House in November of 2022. However, despite that billing, the county claimed Wade kept no records of what occurred during this interaction. And of course, when Nathan Wade was asked what happened during that meeting, he couldn't remember. He had no such contemporaneous memory. And he also couldn't remember anything about what the January 6th committee did when they were working directly with him as well. So Fani Willis and her team are so corrupt, as well as the former administration acting in some of the most corrupt ways you possibly can. G. Fontaine says Thune or more powerful politicians than this figurehead of the Senate may be ordered not to act by wealthy foreign powers along the lines of or similar to CARE or Just the Juice. I would imagine that there are definitely more powerful actors that are putting pressure on Thune to not do anything. I don't think that he is acting of his own accord in any respect. It doesn't necessarily have to be foreign. It could also be powerful entities here in the United States as well. But somebody needs to figure out what it is that John Thune has in his closet so that we can put some pressure on him. I've said this before. I think the administration should probably play as dirty as they possibly can. Somebody should blackmail John Thune into finally doing his job. All right, now we also have a new release coming from the FBI. We've got some breadcrumbs as part of this new information dropped by Senator Chuck Grassley. This is based on whistleblower reporting, and it suggests that a special agent of the FBI, Walter Giardina, who is a name that we've spoken about before because he was involved in numerous of these deep state investigations to try to get Trump. When he was engaging in this behavior, he not merely committed misconduct, but potentially broke the law. I would suggest he definitely did. But in a letter from the 15th of last month to who at that time was the Attorney General Pam Bondi and Director Kash Patel, Grassley excerpted claims of misconduct that were undertaken by multiple members of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team. The Iowa senator had obtained a copy of an FD 302 interview summary that detailed these allegations. They included claims that the government improperly sought to renew a FISA warrant
on Trump campaign advisor Waleed Fariz. Waleed Fariz was the subject of one of these Crossfire Hurricane adjacent investigations connected to the Trump team, who had done absolutely nothing wrong. He was found to have not broken any laws, not even done anything that justified the continuation of that FISA warrant. And that is specifically what Walter Giardinia's conduct is related to. Now, according to that letter from Grassley, the agent interviewed for that 302 was involved in Crosswind. This was the sub-investigation under Crossfire Hurricane, and Crosswind is the one that reportedly focused on whether or not Fariz had violated the FARA Act, well, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Now, Fariz spoke with Real Clear Investigations, and he said that the CIA issued a report back in 2016 which contained false allegations. They claimed in 2016 that he accepted a $10 million bribe from the Egyptian government. That bribe was allegedly intended for the Trump campaign during a meeting in Cairo. Now, that obviously never happened, which is why the investigation ended up going nowhere. But this 302 that was released last month details an FBI agent's claim that a battle erupted inside the special counsel's office concerning whether or not the team should seek a third FISA renewal against Fariz. Now, the FBI agent Andre Corey at the time said no. And according to that 302, also said they were getting all of the information they needed from interviews with the target of the investigation because Fariz was actually cooperating and providing everything that they needed. However, the FBI continued by noting that Corey said the FISA surveillance would not give us anything more, and there was nothing in the past FISA that aided the investigation other than to prove that the target was being honest with investigators. So there was no more need to get a third renewal of that FISA warrant. In that interview, the agent explained that he did not agree with renewing the FISA, but there were different reasons. He said, as the investigation progressed, the facts that we originally thought meant one thing, we learned to actually mean something else. There was reporting from another agency, and what we learned from the investigation up to that point of the third renewal was that there were no corroborating facts that would tie Crosswind, who is Fariz, to certain facts that we thought were originally true. As an example, there was nothing confirming Fariz received a large money payment and nothing confirming Fariz had a meeting in another country for the purpose of the initial allegations. What's interesting to me is that we don't have any accountability for the CIA. The CIA made this claim initially, handed it over to the FBI who would do the investigation, but there is absolutely nothing to show that any of it was true. Now, very similar to a lot of what we've seen in all of these investigations into President Trump. Now, the FBI agent interviewed in that 302 called the special counsel's FISA renewal the most egregious of the misconduct, and that the team sought to continue to surveil Fariz despite the change in our information, meaning everybody was well aware that Fariz had done nothing and that there was no reason to continue surveilling him. So that agent explained that he made specific corrections to the applications, numerous instances throughout the FISA certified copy process. And guess what? It was Kevin mother effing Kleinsmith, who would later be convicted of making a false statement related to the Carter Page FISA application. And he said, we can't send this to the DOJ, because if they sent it to the DOJ, then it would become obvious that they could no longer continue to ask for FISA extensions. In addition to the unnamed FBI agent interviewed in this 302 and Agent Corey, a third agent named Murphy also opposed seeking a renewal of the FISA on Fariz. Corey and Murphy, along with others who expressed concerns about the handling of the investigation, were removed from the special counsel's team. One FBI agent, however, was apparently very willing to vouch for the facts detailed in that FISA application. And guess what? It was Walter Giardina, who signed the FISA as case agent. So if this FISA application submitted in the Carter Page investigation mirrored those used to obtain a renewal for the FISA surveillance on Fariz, that means that Walter Giardina declared under penalty of perjury that the information in the FISA application was true and correct, and that the FBI has reviewed the verified application for accuracy in accordance with the Woods procedures. Of course, none of that would be true. So yes, in fact, Walter Giardina has broken the law. Giardina's name is familiar to anybody who's been listening recently because, according to Grassley, whistleblowers have previously accused Giardina of falsely stating that the Steele dossier was corroborated as true. Never was. Giardina allegedly also stated openly his animosity toward then-President Trump, and he made his personal motivation to investigate Trump known to anybody who would listen. Grassley also revealed that Giardina electronically wiped the laptop he was assigned while working for Special Counsel Mueller outside of established protocols for record preservation, which raises the possibility that he destroyed government records. I think that it's a foregone conclusion. If he wiped his government-issued laptop used for the purposes of working on the special counsel's team, he undoubtedly destroyed government records. Now, also according to Grassley, his office learned that Giardina's involvement spanned everything from Crossfire Hurricane to Arctic Frost to the special counsel's investigation, also as well as the targeting of Dan Scavino, Roger Stone, and Peter Navarro. At a minimum, Giardina appears knee-deep in the swamp's weaponization of the federal government, but last month's release of the 302 suggests that when Giardina signed that FISA renewal application, he crossed a criminal line. Please, God, please, Todd Blanche, please, Kash Patel, take this guy down and charge him. Now, to ascertain whether or not Giardina and others hold any criminal liability requires more information than we know at this time. But that's why it's a question for the grand conspiracy grand jury down in Florida. The FBI agent interviewed for that 302 provided a roadmap because they believe Giardina did cross a line. He said, if possible, if I was going to do it, I would get a copy of the last FISA and a copy of the prediction. Look at the reporting from a couple of other U.S. government agencies. Our understanding of things changed during the investigation. These three documents were all disproven. Yet despite this, the team still went ahead with the third FISA renewal. Well, the one thing we do know is that Grassley has already requested that the FBI provide him with that exact information that was suggested by the whistleblower. Even better, in addition to providing the Senate Oversight Committee with these documents, FBI Director Kash Patel should also ensure prosecutors reportedly look into potential charges against those perpetrators that variously were involved in all of these Trump hoaxes. We got to get the details necessary to assess whether any crimes were actually committed when the special counsel clearly violated Ferry's constitutional rights by improperly obtaining that third FISA renewal. I mean, by violating his constitutional rights, they already committed a crime. But all I can say is the people who are involved in this stuff, they've got to be smarter than me. They've got access to this stuff. Please, God, go after these dirty FBI agents and DOJ officials. All right. Now, we also have a new prediction from Senator Rick Scott in regards to the vacation of President Trump's Ukraine impeachment. Scott has actually put forth legislation to have it completely wiped. The only problem is that they're not going to be able to vote on it because the House is not going to accept it. And until they pass the Save America Act, anything the Senate wants to do is dead and gone, dead and buried. Nobody is going to pass anything in the meantime. So please, Senate, the only thing we need from you is to handle the Save America Act. All right, now, also very notable, under the looming threat of an expulsion vote, Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick has today resigned her position in the House of Representatives. She was none too happy about the fact that she's already been held accountable by the Ethics Committee, and we have her resignation statement right here. We're going to read through that. She says, "This was not a fair process. The Ethics Committee refused my new attorney's reasonable request for time to prepare my defense. By going forward with this process while a criminal indictment is pending, the committee prevented me from defending myself. I will not stand by and pretend that this has been anything other than a witch hunt. You stole $5 million. I simply cannot stand by and allow my due process rights to be trampled on and my good name to be tarnished. Rather than play these political games, I choose to step away so that I can devote my time to fighting for my neighbors in the Florida's 20th District. I hereby resign from the 119th Congress, effective immediately. But let me say this plainly. We should be very careful about the precedent we are setting. In this country, we do not punish people before due process is complete. We do not allow allegations alone to override the will of the people. That is a dangerous path and one that should concern every American, regardless of party. To my constituents, it has been the honor of my life fighting for you in the U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you for standing with me and fighting alongside me. This fight is far from over. Now, here's the thing. Your due process in a criminal court is wholly separate from your due process in Congress, okay? The rules of the Constitution are not governing you and your position in the Congress in the same way they are as a private citizen, all right? The Congress has a series of due processes set up to determine whether or not you should remain in your seat. And they took a look at the evidence. I realize it's prior to your criminal case being fully brought to trial, but they looked at the evidence and they said there is enough here to suggest that you likely did the things you are accused of. And as such, we don't want you in Congress anymore. All right, that's it. That's how it works. And I'm sorry you don't like it, but you still have an opportunity to go to trial and you can try to prove your innocence in trial. But I don't think that you're going to be able to. I think that you're a scammer. I think that you come from scamming lineage, and I think that ultimately you're going to be found guilty. All right. Now, also in the House of Representatives, Corey Mills has just been put on notice by Nancy Mace. She is calling for an expulsion vote against him. And the one thing that I think she didn't do properly is that she has accused Corey Mills of all of the things that I've already said others have accused him of, but she apparently hasn't done the due diligence to verify the things that Corey Mills is accused of. So she's called for his expulsion. She's actually put it on the docket, but she says during the next full House Armed Services Committee and or oversight hearing I attend, I am going to subpoena for Corey Mills' unredacted DD-214 and the Form 638 for a Bronze Star that General Bray says he did not read or review and did not physically sign for Mills, and a few police reports. This is partially what I will subpoena for. Don't worry, there will be more. This is everything she's asking for. Number one, any and all DA Form 638s, all attachments, all associated documents, DA Form 21, unredacted official military personnel file, unredacted DD-214, unredacted report of separation and record of service, NGB Form 22, outcome of 2024 investigation into Corey Mills Metals, all permanent orders issued by the U.S. Army Task Force Falcon, Baghdad, Iraq, pertaining to Mills in the period of April 2003 through December 2003 that were signed by Major Peter Wilhelm, Permanent Order D7433795 dated August 21st, 2024, unredacted. Application submitted to the U.S. Department of State from 2004 to 2009. The DD-214 Mills submitted to the Department of State. Medals awarded to Joseph Haidt and Jesse Walker for the Battle of Samawa. This is the incident where Haidt and Alan Babin were injured. This is also what Corey takes credit for on his alleged D8 Form 638 Bronze Star recommendation that was not read, reviewed, or physically signed by the appropriate Army general. So I'm not certain whether or not Corey Mills is going to be expelled, but Nancy Mace is definitely pushing for it. And as such, people are saying a lot of shit. Corey Mills is saying a lot of shit about Nancy Mace as well. All right. Now, one final story that I do want to make sure we get to, because this was also very important and it came out yet. Well, actually, I think maybe there might be a couple more, but it was announced yesterday that a 44-year-old Iranian woman who's been living in the United States with a green card was arrested on Saturday night at LA International Airport. She was allegedly brokering a massive arms deal for the Iranian government that included the sale of armed drones, bombs, bomb fuses, and millions of rounds of ammunition. It was all destined for Sudan. Her name was Shamim Mafi. She was living in Woodland Hills, California, in Los Angeles, and she's now facing a federal charge under 50 U.S.C. 1705 for violating the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to facilitate the illegal export and sale of Iranian-made weapons. If she is convicted, and I would say she likely will be, she's facing a statutory maximum of 20 years in federal prison. Now, according to the first Assistant U.S. Attorney Bill Asaili, my man in the Central District of California, Mafi allegedly used an Oman-registered company to arrange these transactions as recently as last year. One reported deal involved a contract worth more than $70 million for Iranian-made Mohajer-6 armed drones that are supplied by Iran's Ministry of Defense and Armed Forces Logistics. Prosecutors also allege they have phone records showing Mafi had direct contact with Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security between December of 2022 and June of 2025. Now, the alleged gun runner had posted glamorous photos of herself from all over the world, and in one photo, she is seen posing in a $100,000 Mercedes-Benz Roadster. So yeah, she's an Iranian national. She came to the United States of America, got herself a green card, and then very quickly became an arms dealer. It makes you wonder how many of these types of people are currently living here inside the United States. 20 years isn't enough, Sedan says. Well, at the end of that 20-year period, she would be deported. They aren't going to let her back out onto the street. eGrab4 says, my $5 plus some for those who can't contribute. I love your show, Zach. We closed on our house in Niceville, Florida, May 15th. Excellent. Congratulations and welcome to Florida. That is so cool. I'm glad to hear that, buddy. All right, now, Kevin Warsh is President Trump's nominee to lead the Fed to replace Jerome Powell, and his confirmation hearing was today. We do have one clip here showing Senator Pocahontas Elizabeth Warren attempting to catch Kevin in a gotcha moment, but it does backfire on her. Let's take a listen.
In one aspect of President Trump's economic agenda with which you disagree.
Well, Senator, the Federal Reserve in recent years has wandered outside of its remit, wandered into other areas.
I'm asking for something
That's
you
not something I'm
disagree
prepared
with Donald
to do.
Trump on.
If I'm confirmed, the Federal Reserve should stay in its lane.
Just one little place where you disagree with Donald Trump.
Well, I do have a disagreement, actually, Senator, with the president. I think even this morning, he said that he thought I was out of central casting. I think central casting, I'd look older, grayer, and maybe show up here with a cigar of sorts.
Quite adorable. But you know, we need a Fed chair who is independent. That's the only way we preserve the independence of the Federal Reserve. If you can't answer these questions, you don't have the courage and you don't have the independence.
What a see you next Tuesday. Either way, Elizabeth Warren and everybody else who hates Donald Trump want someone in power at the Fed that is not going to support President Trump's economic policies, even though his economic policies are universally good for America. The Fed may be independent, but that's a problem for America as well. Okay, I thought that I saw something over there, but I don't. All right, now, you guys remember Carmelo Anthony, right? Carmelo Anthony was the young thug who stabbed a young man to death, Austin Metcalf, at a track and field meet in Texas last year. Now, the judge overseeing this case at this point, Collin County District Judge John Roach Jr., has just issued a sweeping set of restrictions on media coverage for the upcoming murder trial of Anthony. Anthony, of course, is now an adult. Austin Metcalf was only 17 when he died in the arms of his twin brother. The order was signed last week in the 269th District Court. It's going to limit press access and it's going to ban all recording devices. That's a shame. I really feel like this should be available to the public as it's happening live. There is obviously intense public interest, and the judge said the precedent set by the U.S. Supreme Court claims that excessive media coverage can prejudice the trial. These are the rules that he has put into effect. The trial is set to begin June 1st. Courtroom opens at 8:30 a.m. Staggered entry, credentialed media at 8:30. Victims and defendants' families come in at 8:40. General public at 8:50. Doors close at 9 o'clock. No re-entry. If you leave, you can't get back in.
Only 9 credentialed media members are permitted inside the courthouse at any time. The Collin County Public Information Office will manage those credentials and seatings. There will be no photography, no video, no audio recording, no live streaming. No audio-visual capture is allowed by the media or the public. Nobody can take pictures, no images or recordings of witnesses, prospective jurors, or jurors who actually do get chosen. Media interviews with trial participants are prohibited inside the courtroom. They can only occur after the trial ends. You have to maintain strict decorum. That means no reactions, no outbursts, no talking, no signs, no gestures. All attendees must clear security screening, and trial exhibits will not be released until after the verdict. So the sheriff's office is going to be the one enforcing the order. Violations might result in removal, loss of credentials, or even charges of contempt. Of course, shortly after the indictment of Carmelo Anthony, the spokesperson for the family, Dominique Alexander, someone from the Next Generation Action Network, publicly characterized the upcoming murder trial as a fight against white supremacy. A fight against white supremacy. Alexander said this case is yet another example of what it means to be black in America, where even our own self-defense is questioned, scrutinized, and politicized. He continued by saying to the racists, the bigots, and those filled with hate who've targeted Carmelo, his family, and even myself, you do not intimidate us. We are not backing down. Now, I think everybody here realizes the absurdity of those statements. Alexander also said that his organization, the Next Generation Action Network, would ensure Anthony receives a fair trial. How? You're not a lawyer. You have no right to be putting any restrictions on anybody else. But he said it's going to be free from lies, outside interference, and bigotry. He urged supporters to stand with us in the fight against white supremacy and support the truth and due process. Ultimately, I think that many of these rules that the judge has put into place is to ensure that Mr. Alexander and his organization are not allowed to flood the courtroom with activists that would be supporting Carmelo Anthony. Now, there was nothing about this murder that was self-defense in nature. The response from Carmelo Anthony to whatever it was that Austin Metcalf did or said went far beyond anything that would be considered self-defense. If somebody, this is like the typical kind of bullshit that I see from kids nowadays. People used to settle things with their fists. Now you have one person who might want to settle something with their fist, and then the other person brings a gun or a knife, and then somebody ends up losing their life. And the murder of Austin Metcalf was completely unnecessary. All right. This is an interesting story. 2 U.S. Embassy officials who are actually employees of the Central Intelligence Agency were killed in a fiery car crash in Chihuahua, Mexico over the weekend. Apparently, there was a raid on a massive drug lab. We don't have the identities of those now former CIA officials, but according to local press, 2 Mexican officials were in the vehicle with these CIA officers when the vehicle veered off the road, went down a ravine, and exploded in a rural mountainous area in northern Mexico. The officials were not a part of the drug lab raid, and apparently they were there for training. Personally, to me, it sounds like these guys were murdered, right? The U.S. ambassador to Mexico, Ronald Johnson, released a statement and said, "We are deeply saddened by the tragic loss of the 2 embassy personnel, the director of Chihuahua's state investigation agency, and an AEI officer in this accident. We honor their dedication and tireless efforts to confront one of the greatest challenges of our time. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and their loved ones. This tragedy is a solemn reminder of the risks faced by those Mexican and U.S. officials who are dedicated to protecting our communities. It strengthens our resolve to continue their mission and advance our shared commitment to security and justice to protect our people." I don't know if we're going to get any other information about the people who have lost their lives, or, what it was that these guys were actually working on, or, anything that they may be connected to. But this seems just a little bit suspicious to me. So I'd really like to get more information. And if we do, then obviously I will bring it to you. But On Friday and Saturday, there were 6 clandestine synthetic drug labs that were raided in the northern state of Chihuahua. I guess this is after a 3-month investigation. And this accident happened while the officers were returning from the drug raids. And the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, said that she was actually unaware of the U.S. participation in those operations. And the prosecutor later said, well, the Americans weren't actually involved in the operation. So we're getting some conflicting statements about it. Also, interestingly, just as I was going live, it appears that President Trump has recalled Israeli Ambassador Mike Huckabee to the United States. I don't know if that means that he's being permanently recalled and President Trump is going to put somebody else into the position of ambassador to Israel. But Mike Huckabee appears to be coming home. Let me see if I can find anything new about it. Before we leave, Mike Huckabee, amid developments with Iran, U.S. ambassador to Israel summoned back to Washington for talks at the White House. Okay, so looks like he may just be coming back because they don't want him talking on the phone. So not necessarily that he will no longer be the ambassador to Israel, but it's kind of unusual given the current set of circumstances that they wouldn't want to keep somebody there to make sure that everything happened as normal. All right, one final thank you from our friends over here on Rumble. And that will be our good people over here at 1775 Coffee. You guys, if you still have not yet tried 1775 Coffee, I want to implore you that you should. They do have some of those starter kits available. In those starter kits, you're going to get their bold dark roast, their smooth medium roast, and their vitality mushroom coffee that gives you clean energy and laser focus without the crash. All of it is best coffee you're possibly going to get. Single origin, small batch, toxin and mold free. You're also going to get a couple of free goodies. That includes their gold spoon clip, a strong frother, and a black 1775 tumbler. It's a great deal. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for $99. So this is for all the people watching, seeing 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder, is this good coffee? Should I actually try it? Spoiler alert, yes, you should. So to find out for yourself, you got to go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab one of those starter kits before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Thank you very much to the good folks at Rumble. I'd also like to remind everyone watching that my friends over at onenessdrops.com have still got that buy one, get one free sale that is going on for the rest of the month. And let me just get the screen fixed. All right. The link is in the description, but it's onenessdrops.com/promo/BOGO Red Pill 78. If you use the code BOGO Red Pill 78 when you check out, everything that you add to your cart, they will automatically add a second one. So you will get a free of whatever it is that you purchase, whether it's the chlorine dioxide water purification kits or the mullein extract for lung health or the soursop extract for cellular regeneration or their DMSO, which of course is a solvent that is great for injuries. It brings blood to the surface of the skin, which allows your injury to heal faster. I've been so impressed with my experience with DMSO, and a lot of people have had great results from it as well. But they also have their bundles, which allow you to try a number of different things that they have. You'll get a special discount on those, and then you'll also get another free one. onenessdrops.com/promo/BOGO Red Pill 78 and give them a shout. And of course, all of the other sponsors, mypillow.com, where you use code RP78. My friend Jordan at consciousstrength.net, use code RP78. You'll get 10% off. My friends over at Richardson Nutrition Center, rncstore.com/RP78. You'll get a discount, 10% off on everything they offer, which primarily is the B17 Laetrile. I would also recommend that everybody watching go and check out the playlist that I have on my Rumble channel, which is all of the interviews that I've done with people on naturopathic, holistic, and alternative treatments for a variety of big C's
things that would traditionally kill you. And we're still live on YouTube, so I'm not exactly sure how I can talk about that. I also have a very important interview that is going to be coming up that I can't wait to show you guys, and it's directly related to this subject, cancer treatments and things related to that. So please definitely keep your eyes open. Make sure that you're following. Make sure that you have notifications turned on. Make sure that you're also following my socials. Also, thank you to Albus, who says, thank you for your work, RP78. Thank you, Albus, for being here. I appreciate you. And also to G. Fontez, who says, thank you, Zach. Let's go Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Montreal Canadiens. I know that it's hockey season. John was watching a game last night while we were actually doing Baseless Conspiracies. And I think I might have somebody that I need to thank on Cash App. So I'm just checking that real quick. Yes, Miss Fudge for sure should be packed in a jail cell. Thank you to Janet on Cash App for that. I appreciate you, Janet. And let me see. Also, Angela. Thank you so much, Angela. Appreciate you. I don't know if I said thank you for that one, but it's there, so I want to make sure that I do. All right, you guys, I'm going to send you off on a raid. Good luck. God bless. Have a wonderful night. It's freaking happening. I'll see you tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Peace.